Good day, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Viper for Viperland, and I'm back. We've got Fata Morgana, and we've got short stories. So, last time, which one was it? It was the Revenant Stream? Yeah. We technically started Slow Killing Poison. I'm going to start it over. The Revenant Stream went through the whole thing because it was topical at the time, compared to what we had previously read in the story. So we're just gonna go through these. We're gonna go through them. This one was like a half hour. I don't know if they're all gonna be like a half hour. Let's go. Technically, we got like 5 minutes into this one, but it's better to just start it over instead of just have that disjointed. The maid spoke little of what happened after the white-haired girl's disappearance in the Era of Roses, but she believed the rest of the tale insignificant, of no value to share with her listener, the white-haired girl herself. Thus, her role as storyteller ended with the girl's departure from the stage, and while the other characters' stories continued on, they were cut from the script, afforded not their moment in the limelight, left to waste away in obscurity. 1. A slow killing poison. Arthur Baldwin was vexed. Shortly before they were to be married, his engagement with Nellie Rhodes, eldest daughter of the Rhodes family, had been broken off. Yeah, we don't actually have a water sound effect command. It's only tied to the hydrate. But I'll say, sorry, how's it going? Welcome to Viperland in the chat. How you doing? He understood well enough why it had happened, and had it been his decision, he likely would have made the same one. So Arthur's dissatisfaction lay not with the dissolution itself, nor did he bear any fault in it. His bride-to-be had simply been gripped by madness. I hear she attacked an Abigail. Oh, I was told she took one of her eyes out. Even worse, she killed her. Those are but rumors, my dears. The truth is so much more dreadful. I used to work at the Rhodes Manor, you see. And the young lady, she... Initially, Arthur was skeptical of what people were saying. He assumed the tales were being exaggerated as they spread. But when the head of the Rhodes family came personally to deliver reparations and formally nullify the engagement, he gave Arthur a rough overview of what had happened. Also, I don't know if you have this set at the top of your chat, but at the top of my chat, Sor, it shows that you have the highest clip of the month, and also you have the second highest clip of the month. It's just a gold Sor with 29 and a silver Sor with 9, which I think is just funny. They wouldn't bunch it together. They separate it clip by clip, apparently. So you have the two, let's be honest, only clips, but also highest rated clips. Yeah, giving the gold medal to yourself. It's perfect. It is apparently true that Nellie had assaulted an Abigail, and it was true that she spent most of her time in her room now, looking pale and sickly and drained of her spirits. And then, when he said outright, a demon's possessed her, Arthur had little choice but to believe something wasn't right. To top it all off, Nellie's older brother Mel ran off to become a priest, presumably to get away from everything. Nellie's father implored Arthur to remain discreet about her situation, not that he had any intention of going around and spreading personal details about her life. However, rumors have a nasty way of slipping through the tiniest of cracks, sneaking about through the dark like a seasoned cat burglar. What nobles like to refer to as social gatherings were in practice more like gossip gatherings, and in short order the Rhodes family's eldest daughter was the talk of the high society. Incidentally, the painter whose downfall eventually culminated into this tragedy was also strangled by the noble grapevine, although Arthur had no way of knowing that as much. Perhaps the painter's curse extended beyond the girl's hair color, and the Rhodes family was destined to be brought to ruin by the gossip of their fellow aristocrats. One evening, Arthur decided he would sneak into the Rhodes Manor. He had requested visitations with Nellie on numerous occasions, but been turned away every time. She's in no condition for company, was what they kept telling him, which left him no choice but to see her uninvited. The aroma of the roses seemed more overpowering at night than during the day, and he wasn't sure whether it was just his imagination. The nagging irritation it caused him was, however, not only in his mind. Arthur instructed his coachman to wait on a street a little ways out and made the rest of the way to the manor on foot, entering through the garden. As he waded through the sea of roses, he clenched his teeth. Arthur preferred restraint when it came to both gardening and girls. What am I doing with my life? How did I end up here, sneaking about trying to find that obnoxious little girl's room? Arthur had few pleasant memories of this rose garden. The roads and Baldwins had a long history, so as a child he would often find himself left here to play while the adults did business. It was him, Nellie, who could never seem to stop hanging off her brother, and Mel, the textbook definition of a well-behaved aristocrat boy. Not once had he managed to step into the siblings' private world. There was only room for the two of them, leaving Arthur stuck out there all by himself. The best he could manage was a little teasing now and then. For example, saying her hair looked like the color of fallen leaves. Never asked for this engagement anyway. Who would even want to marry a girl who thinks herself some kind of princess? Not me, that's for sure. But still, he had known her practically his whole life. Of course he was going to be curious when people were saying she had gone mad or been possessed by a demon. He was just curious, he told himself, as he drew nearer to Nellie's window. The curtains appeared to be drawn. He couldn't see anything inside, so he crouched down to pick up a few pebbles to toss over the veranda. A few soft taps rang out in the night before the curtain finally shifted. A few moments later, a young girl stumbled out into the moonlight. Despite already knowing the answer, his first thought was, "Who is that?" Why is my phone going off? Oh, okay. He wanted to smack himself, but at the same time, it was hard to deny the discrepancies between the girl standing there and the girl of his memories. The moonlight seemed to give her flaxen hair a ghostly bluish tint. It fluttered in a passing breeze, and Arthur felt something about her he had never had before. She's pretty. Whoa, slow down. What's wrong with you? Pretty? That self-centered, spoiled little brat? There wasn't a trace of the rambunctious Nellie he knew to be found. She stood there by the veranda's railing, gazing vaguely off into space like a pensive spirit. Also, hey, Seven, how you doing? Welcome to Viperland in the chat. Hope your weekend has treated you well. Now that it's, Sunday night already, because time just flies. It's just how it goes. Still mildly undecided on Tuesday. I think I need to do Monster Hunter first. But man, I really like doing raids day one. I think I need to do Monster Hunter first. And also, Eric, how's it going? Welcome to Viperland in the chat. Hope you all had a good weekend. We short storying. It wasn't at all what Arthur had expected to see when he came calling. He assumed she would be nothing but skin and bones, haggard and unsightly. Now, Lady Nellie, do you not think it rude to not at least greet me? We were engaged, as you might recall. Her eyes still unfocused, Nellie turned her gaze down toward where Arthur stood. It was a reaction, but still he felt as though she had snubbed him, which did little to alleviate the irritation building up since he had arrived. No net. That sucks. Yeah, first world problem, but considering everything is internet related these days, a fairly sizable first world problem though. Hope that gets fixed soon. We all know ISPs love to be the worst. Literally was talking about that with Calco and Effort today, about how it's been so smooth and not optimum ever since being on Frontier. It's great. Not to say no problems will happen down the line, but not optimum is optimal. Look, it's like a scene right out of your beloved Romeo and Juliet. Not that I'm here enthusiastically, of course. Mumbling complaints to himself, Arthur climbed a nearby tree, leaping from a branch onto the veranda. And there she was, within arm's reach, but as distant as ever. Still, he could see nothing in her eyes. Hello? Say something already, would you, Nellie? Perhaps she really had lost her mind, just not in the way he had been led to believe. Arthur spent a few moments pondering how to proceed. He didn't consider himself a model gentleman like Mel, not even slightly, but he wasn't so crass as to laugh it off either. You certainly are quiet tonight, aren't you? I'm not sure how I'm supposed to act when you're like a completely different person. Every time you open your mouth, I want to sew it shut. You're always complaining. Nothing's ever good enough for you. Right now, I just want you to say something. Anything. How am I supposed to know what's going through your head if you don't tell me? Or is there just nothing at all? Nellie's gaze glided past Arthur and onto the rose garden behind him. Ugh, yeah. That sucks. To the update for Sky. Oh, okay. Well, there must have been like a day one update or something. I still haven't actually nabbed the game myself, but at least that would have given you something. hopefully it's up soon, then? Nellie, are you listening to me? He tried again and again to get her attention, calling her name, waving his hand in front of her face, gently tugging on her hair. Ugh. Like, calling her name, waving the hand, sure, but tugging her hair? I mean, I guess. But all his attempts were fruitless. She simply stood there, lifeless, a well-crafted doll. He wasn't sure exactly how to describe how he felt. Slightly unsettled to start, a bit of pity to go with it, and a great deal of something yanking at his insides. Arthur had few pleasant memories with the Rhodes. That didn't mean he wanted to erase his past with them entirely, though. But looking at her, this empty shell, he felt almost as though those days were disappearing with her. How irritating. He knew the word wasn't right, but he went with it anyway, heaving a sigh after letting it linger in the air for a moment. It's always been like this. I'm no more than a buzzing insect to you. Can't stand this dreadful rose garden. It was exhausting to have to come here again and again just because our families are close. I would try to say something, and you'd go running off into your darling brother's arms. Dearest Mel this, dearest Mel that. Is that all you know how to say? And he would just give you a half-hearted smile and pretend to be sorry for not paying attention to you. Arthur looked out over the garden as well. He was more talking to himself than he was to Nellie. I'm sure you don't remember, but one time I even brought you flowers. What were they? Some kind of anemone, I think? But you wouldn't take them. You said the roses here were prettier, so you didn't need my flowers. I mean, to be fair. Rookie mistake bringing somebody in a manor filled with a giant rose garden flowers. Maybe you should have thought a little bit. I don't know if that's necessarily a her fault type deal. The whole Nell thing, sure. Or Mel thing, yeah, sure. Total brother complex, absolutely. But the flower thing was on you. What a miserable day that was. But standing beside this silent specter, melancholy overwhelmed any anger or frustration he might have otherwise felt. Perhaps it was because nothing he said managed to elicit any reaction out of her. Or perhaps because he wished he had come out and said this all sooner. Unless expressed, feelings merely fester. I don't care one bit about you. I mean that. It's only ever been about doing what's best for my family. Of course, Nellie was a perfect example of why you couldn't let everything out either. The gossip spoke not only of her attacking an Abigail, but of her destroying her relationship with her brother. And that was likely what had done the most damage. Knowing what he knew of Nellie in her younger days, Arthur had little trouble believing what the rumor said, that her affection for Mel went far beyond simple familial love. Yeah, very believable. It was for my family, but that doesn't mean I wasn't going to try to get along with you. You probably don't believe me since I certainly never acted like it, but I genuinely did want us to be on good terms. It's just, you had to be the one who changed first. You were always treating me like I was worthless, like I meant nothing to you. Not like any of that would have even left an impression on your one-track mind, of course. But that's why I wanted you to take the first step. I'm not some wise old monk who can just turn my frustration off on command. Arthur let out another sigh. Do you think anything would have gone differently if I could have been more grown up? A gust of wind blew through, sending up a flurry of rose petals, carrying them up past the two of them, and through the velvet curtains into Nellie's bedchambers. A faint smile crossed her lips. Arthur could only guess what was going through her mind, but what was reflected in her eyes. In her room he could see several pairs of small children's shoes, a doll with its hair all neatly made up, a pile of sheet music drawn for her by a respected composer years earlier, and toys carved from wood. It was like he was looking through a window into the past. That was all he needed to know. He could have treated her like the princess she thought she was, and she would have gone down the same path. Nellie's eyes were on one person only. Arthur wasn't even a shadow on her peripheral. Your brother's still smiling for you in there, isn't he? And that was all she needed. After that night, Arthur stayed away from the Rhodes and never mentioned the siblings again. It was the best thing to do, he thought. He had his own life to worry about. But fate wouldn't allow him to avoid hearing about the family from time to time. About 4 years later, Nellie, who had apparently fallen ill, passed away at the young age of 18. The Rhodes held a small funeral service which Mel did not attend. Arthur couldn't even begin to imagine what he, her brother, felt about it. But another 3 years later, Mel followed behind her. At the age of 24, he threw himself off the top of a church tower. According to those near him, he had been acting unusual in the months leading up to his death, claiming he could hear a woman's voice talking to him. If he had taken his life out of grief, 3 years seemed like too long of a gap. Perhaps it had built up over time, and that was how long it took to reach the boiling point, but that's not how it felt to Arthur. It felt like Mel had been guided there by a higher power, or maybe pushed. There was one other strange detail. He had died at exactly the strike of noon, as the bell rang its 12th toll. And you only play 8 tolls on the fade out? Shame. Shame, shame. Before I start this one, I should blow my nose. There we go. Yeah, these are definitely filed under the not dreadfully important to the overarching plot, but nice little just sprinkles of seasoning to flesh out things. You can totally get the whole plot without it, but it's not bad to have them. Number 2, pain, beyond ending for a moment of hesitation. How can you be sure that even now, I still love you? Can you deny the possibility that I no longer yearn for you, but the white-haired girl? Can you deny the possibility that my love for you has transformed into hate? Farewell, Mikhail. In a brief moment of hesitation, Mikhail had abandoned Giselle, leading to the worst possible outcome for the both of them. The both of them, and one other as well, a young girl. The girl, however, remained oblivious to her fate. Are you sure you really wanted to let him go? The girl leaned back in a rocking chair before the fireplace, tracing her bottom lip with her skeletal finger. Her face was covered in hideous scars, a fitting look for the witch of the cursed mansion, but it was her devilish smile that left the strongest impact. The maid, who now remembered she was Giselle, was putting kindling on the fire, a task she had done countless times over hundreds of years. But this time the circumstances were slightly different. Yes, I'm sure. Giselle looked up at the witch, distraught. Her already unnaturally pale face was almost entirely devoid of color. Just moments earlier, she had banished the man she loved. She had cast Mikhail's soul back into the void, sending it off with a wish that he would never find his way back to this mansion. I see, the witch said, still running her finger across her lip. I don't think I'll ever understand. If you hate someone, you should chain them down and torture them for all eternity. It was the perfect opportunity to trap his soul. I do not hate him, Giselle said, causing the witch's bony finger to come to a sudden halt. The witch raised an eyebrow, perplexed, but it was hidden in the shadow of her hood for no one to see. Oh, is that so, my dear? After everything you said, I simply assumed. I could never come to hate him. I could never want to see him dead or tortured. As she spoke, the look of dejection on Giselle's face deepened. However, there seemed to be a hint of relief beneath it, which the witch couldn't comprehend. The witch's eyebrows, yeah. Oh ho? Then why did you say what you did? The witch extended her skeletal finger towards Giselle. Giselle sighed, saying, I don't think you would understand. Yeah, doubt it. Sometimes you kept your distance from someone because you loved them. You sent them back to the mortal realm to live a normal life away from you, an undying apparition, because you loved them. You never wanted them to set foot in the cursed mansion again because you loved them. The witch would never understand those desires. She would never understand telling someone, I don't love you, because you loved them. And she would never understand lying to push someone away because you loved them. Probably not, the witch said. I'm not particularly interested in understanding either. Doesn't matter what happened in the interim. In the end, nothing's changed, has it, my dear? You're still my darling, devoted maid. With enough time, you will once more forget your name. Giselle slowly closed her eyes, which was right. In time, the mansion would eat away at her until there was once again nothing left. However, she no longer felt any fear about losing herself again. Giselle had no one to wait for anymore. It meant she was free from having to despair about him never showing up now. She didn't regret her choice either. as she had shown Mikhail the events of her own past, she had come to realize that she was no longer that person, that she was merely an unsettling shadow of the woman he had known, and she didn't want to subject him to that. It's for the best. Giselle repeated that phrase to herself again and again. A devilish smile rose to the witch's lips as she watched her gaze slowly sink to the cold floor. What a wonderful world this is, she said. She was in complete control of everything, after all. The cursed mansion existed outside reality, an eternal prison where time held no meaning. What one soul perceived as a day could be a second or a year for another soul. The witch Morgana awoke from a long rest. She opened her eyes, and there was the fireplace, crackling away. Before it knelt a woman with deathly pale skin, feeding the fire with kindling. Morgana had no idea where the maid had got the wood. Oh, hello there. Good morning. The witch snorted. Good morning to you as well, my dear, Morgana said. How long has it been? Since when? Since you cast him out. Cast who out? The maid said with her usual smile, tilting her head, which was all Morgana needed to hear to know what had happened. It's been long enough for you to have fully reverted, I see. Whatever do you mean? The maid asked. Oh, is this one of your riddles? When have I ever given a riddle? You're the one who likes to make everything you say sound mysterious, my dear. My, if you say so. Are you trying to agitate me? Of course not. Now, would you like to start your day with a cup of herbal tea? Morgana sighed. It seemed the maid had indeed fully reverted. She'd had this exchange every single time she woke up since the maid's mind had broken, and even though her own sense of time had dulled as well, having to answer the same questions over and over again was still frustrating. She was the one who had broken the maid's mind in the first place, though, so she understood she had brought this on herself. I've told you this again and again. I don't need any tea. What about breakfast? The maid asked. I don't need food either, as I've also told you repeatedly. The maid pursed her lips into a little pout. Any food or tea you prepare is nothing but the product of a deluded spirit's imagination, and I would cast myself into the void before touching that, the witch thought, sighing. Then will you be doing your usual rounds of the house? The maid asked. I suppose, the girl said, gazing up at the dark ceiling. Her only real pastime was visiting the three souls trapped here and tormenting them. Sometimes with words, sometimes with visions of the past, and sometimes with her own two hands. Gradually, bit by bit, she chipped away at their souls. As the master of the house, it acted to serve her will, and that influence was especially powerful while it existed outside time, which meant she could do almost anything she pleased, and she had taken full advantage of that ability to torture the souls of the flaxen-haired boy, the beast-like swordsman, and the monstrous lord. She was more than willing to spend the rest of eternity enacting her revenge on the three of them. That said, she felt things were getting a bit repetitive, and with Mikhail banished, there was no longer any hope of outside entertainment, which left her the only one with the power to mix things up. It might be time to send them out again. The maid blinked at her, perplexed, but of course she wouldn't understand. She didn't know about the three souls imprisoned here. Are you going to release something from the mansion? The maid asked quizzically. I would never, the witch said, cackling. They've been placed under a powerful curse, a wish of destruction and reconstruction. I'm going to begin that process again, have them live their third lives. Oh, I can't wait to see what terrible ends they meet this time. Aren't you excited, my dear? Yes, very much so, the maid said, smiling as though she had understood a single word. The witch jumped to her feet, giddy with rancor. Imagining the miserable, bloody futures the three terrible men would surely meet had fixed her mood in an instant. They had to suffer for all eternity. They had to endure a fate worse than death. They had to pay for their sins. Over and over and over again. Yeah, definitely people's eyebrow, but just, under the hood. Yeah, hers is just vengeance forever. Morgana first went to visit the flaxen-haired boy, whose soul was imprisoned in the rose garden. As she approached the double doors, they opened on their own, the rusty hinges letting out pained shrieks. On the other side lay a colorless, withered garden, a sad shadow of its once brilliant, colorful splendor. Of course, the witch felt no heartache over the garden's state of decay. A boy's shadow knelt on the ground, almost entirely encased in a briar patch. It was wispy and barely managed to retain its human form. Arms wrapped around his head, he muttered endlessly to himself. It's not all my fault. I can't take this anymore. Someone get me out of here. Morgana stuck her chin out, looking down on the pathetic creature before her. Her last time here, he had been a little more coherent, but now he seemed to be hardly there at all. The flaxen-haired boy's punishment was to relive the day that started it all over and over again. He had to watch dozens of people die during the Harvest Festival celebration, including his own sister, and now that he'd finished his second life as well, she made him watch his mistakes from that as well. Such as the time he called his sister disgusting and pushed her away, the very same sister he betrayed the Lakeside Witch for. I never could have known that would happen. I just wanted a normal life. Someone, please get me out of here. Would you like me to set you free? The witch asked. Only then did the shadow notice her presence, looking up at her with his featureless, empty face. What? The witch's smirk grew wider. I said, I'm thinking of releasing you. If the flaxen-haired boy had any strength left to think, he would have realized this was all the trick, not a sudden display of kindness. But all he could see was an opportunity to escape, and he was going to take it. But please, let me go. He didn't even so much as wonder why. The only thing that registered on his feeble mind was the word free. Nothing else mattered, as long as he could escape this place. The witch's devilish smirk widened even further. Very well, then I shall deliver your soul to its rightful place. You are very fortunate to have this chance to return to the mortal realm, my dear. Thank you so much for your forgiveness. A contorted smile rose to the flaxen-haired boy's face. He then whisked away into nothing, leaving behind only a small breeze to rustle the witch's robe. It took all her strength not to burst out laughing. Thank you for your forgiveness? That was brilliant. She hadn't said a thing about forgiving him. Farewell, Mel, the witch said, tracing her lip with her bone finger. We'll meet again soon, she said. The witch's parting words this time were not until our souls crossed paths once more in the boundless sphere of fate, because she hadn't released him yet, hadn't released him from the curse, so his fate was still bound to her, even as he began life anew. And so long as he remained subject to the curse, so did the soul of the girl who meant so much to him. Next, the witch went to visit the swordsman. His soul was imprisoned in the cellar from which the stench of blood and flesh emanated. After losing his mind, the twisted killer began destroying everything in sight, while howling in some incomprehensible tongue, perhaps his native language, perhaps not a human language at all. The witch was, in truth, not looking forward to this visit. While the cursed mansion was indeed her domain, her own little realm of the dead, she was still just a regular soul herself. If he were to catch her off guard, he could very well damage her soul beyond repair. The witch held the greatest grudge against the barbaric lord, but she remained the most cautious around the swordsman. With an exasperated sigh, she opened the cellar door. And exactly as she had expected, a barely humanoid beast leapt at her the second she did. Stop this instant, she shouted, pointing a bony finger at the beast. In the realm of the dead, it was willpower and not physical strength that ruled, which meant that while the witch had been a helpless girl in life, she was the most powerful being in this domain. At her command, the beast froze mid-motion, a katana held high above his head. He stared wide-eyed at the small girl standing before him, beads of sweat forming on his neck. The beast shouted something in some inhumane tongue. The witch glanced around the cellar. It was littered with corpses, bloodstains on every surface. Perhaps amongst the bodies was even the woman he called his tether. The witch turned her golden eyes back to the beast. In life, she had been terrified of this man, so scared that she had resorted to opening her door for the flaxen-haired boy, hoping to ask for his assistance. But now, there was no fear, only glee at having him entirely under her thumb. How would you like it if I returned you to the realm of the living? She asked with a devilish grin. The beast stared at her blankly, his form shifting into something faintly more human. You're still torn between your two greatest desires, aren't you? Your thirst for blood, and yet you crave a quiet life at the same time. You've already fallen once, lived as a beast, but that wasn't enough to satisfy you. So perhaps the only way to quench your thirst is with the other desire, peace and quiet. And I'm offering you another chance to have that. Do you mean it? Shadow's hands were trembling. It took the witch everything in her power not to start cackling at the sight. That abhorrent killer, shaking like a lamb. Yes, I mean it, she said with a smile. The katana fell from the beast's hands, letting out a loud, high-pitched clang when it hit the hard floor. As the sound echoed in the cellar, it sounded almost like 1,000 ghosts screaming. So you do want to go back to being a man after all. The shadow dropped his head in a crude imitation of a nod. A hideous beast and his most benevolent savior, it was a scene that could have easily taken place between him and the white-haired girl in his second life. Of course, the witch's intentions were nothing like hers. And by the witch's mercy, the beast was freed. With his disappearance, the countless bodies stacked up in the cellar vanished as if they had never been there. Only the smell of blood remained to remind her of the carnage. The witch then burst out laughing, unable to hold it back any longer. "Oh, that was brilliant. Do you really think you'll ever be able to find peace? No. You'll just kill whoever holds you back and descend into madness, no matter how much you resist. This time you're going to turn everyone on you, and die a sad, miserable, gruesome death." Her cackling echoed in the cold cellar for some time. Her final stop was to see the man she despised more than anyone, the Lord. Excuse me. That monstrous savage. The mere thought of him filled her head with a pitch-black rage. He had ruined her life and tainted her soul. He was the cruelest, most barbaric of all of them. He held disgusting blood sabbaths, turning a saint into a spectacle. The witch despised all three men, but her loathing for the Lord, the ultimate root of her suffering, was far, far greater than the other two. She made her way to the den on the second floor. Cigarette smoke seeped out into the hallway, a smell as sad as the man waiting inside. When she opened the door, a cloud of smoke escaped, and only then was she able to see inside. Sitting on the edge of the billiards table, with his head drooped, was the third shadow, again barely able to maintain a human form. A few seconds later, he noticed the witch's presence and stumbled off the table, shuffling precariously towards her. He extended a hand for her in grief and overwhelming regret, but the witch only saw it as a threat. He was trying to hurt her, as he had done so many times in life, to save himself. "Don't you dare touch me," she said, causing his hand to freeze in the air. It formed the chasm between them, boundlessly wide and unfathomably deep. One he would never be able to cross. "Rejoice, Lord," the witch said with a devilish grin. "I'm setting your soul free." The shadow just stood there, staring at her. He didn't rejoice at the news, and in fact seemed to be rather upset by it. He opened his mouth to try to say something, but only strained gasps escaped from his lips. The witch tilted her head. The other two had been thrilled to hear they were being set free, so she was not expecting this reaction. "Ah," she said with a nod, "I see what it is. You realize that it was a trick and that I'm really sending you out to your third doom. I suppose being the Lord for so long, you would need a sense for danger." The man was desperately trying to communicate something to her, but with each attempt to use his voice, it only got less and less comprehensible. If he could speak, then he would have to try something else. So he dragged his legs forward towards the witch. "You will never lay another finger on me," she commanded, pointing a skeletal finger at the shadow's feet. Heavy black chains, strongly reminiscent of those that had been used to seal the observation tower's door, appeared from the floor and wrapped themselves around his ankles, digging deep into his skin. The shadow fell to his knees, and the sound of rattling metal echoed in the den. Oh, what a sorry sight! The former lord of a large territory and the head of a mafia family, on his hands and knees, utterly helpless. How does it feel being looked down on by a mere commoner? It must be absolutely humiliating. The shadow screamed, still mostly indecipherable, but more so than before. His intense desire to get through to her was beginning to show an effect. The witch cackled, glaring down at the pathetic creature before her. She knew how prideful a man he was. He was undoubtedly trying to assail her with curses and promises of vengeance. And oh, how delightful it would be to completely break him. "Go on, my dear. Tell me how much you despise me. Take it nice and slow. You can do it." She crouched before the shadow, peering into his eyes. He didn't have a face to read an expression from, but she could still feel his desperation. He groaned and grunted until finally he was able to form words. "I want to make amends." The witch froze. It took her several seconds to comprehend what he had just said. Had he just asked to make amends? The Lord, the man who had held those dreadful blood sabbaths, tortured slaves for fun, and was concerned only about satisfying his own desires, wanted to atone. For what purpose? I made you into the witch. I'll do anything you want. I want to make amends. Shut up. The witch stepped back away from the Lord. She was rattled, and her face contorted in confusion, luckily hidden by her hood. Right, this was just a ploy to escape from her curse. He was offering atonement in the hope that she would show him mercy. Well, he was a fool. She had no mercy to spare. The only thing she had in her heart was boundless hatred. Having regained her composure, the witch decided she would make him pay for attempting to worm his way free with an empty show of grace. She turned her gaze towards the shadow-cloaked ceiling and made a wish. In her mind, she envisioned the long sword the Lord held above her head, and a few moments later that very blade descended from the void. The time-worn sword rattled to the floor beside the Lord. Raising her fleshless arm, the witch pointed at the blade with a smirk. If you wish to atone for what you've done, you will have to suffer the same pain as I did. Take the blade, and with it sever your own left arm. And should you refuse, that proves you a heartless tyrant, only capable of hurting others, she meant to say, but couldn't finish. Yeah, it's almost like that's kind of how she's become. What? The sound spilled unbidden from her lips as a mass of shadow made a thump against the dense carpet. Jet-black liquid spurted from his left shoulder, staining the area around him. He hadn't even hesitated. What next? The shadow plunged the bloody sword into the ground, leaning against the hilt for support. He was breathing heavily from the pain, but still he asked for more, knowing a single arm didn't compare to the agony she had been made to endure. The witch stared at him, flabbergasted. What on earth was happening? Was this the kind of man the Lord was? No, forget that. Regardless of whatever he was doing now, he had still locked her in the observation tower and killed her. He was a brutal, savage murderer, and nothing changed that. He had to be. He had to be. What do you want me to do next? What will bring you relief? Morgana. Silence! The witch's mind was a mess. Something seemed wrong, but her soul refused to let her see what. Pain that she had long since buried was drifting back to the surface. As anger and hatred bubbled furiously in her gut, she twisted her lips into a smile and proclaimed, "Very well then, as you wish. I'll let you experience the full extent of the pain and helplessness I was made to suffer." And so she put the Lord through all the pain and suffering and despair she had gone through in life, covering his body in wounds from head to toe, and draping the den in a thick layer of black blood. It was the witch's very own blood sabbath. The black shadow lay in a twisted mound at the center of the sea of blood, occasionally strained gurgles, the only sign anything remained inside. He had endured the entirety of her 16 years of life in the tiniest fraction of that time, and as a result, his soul was on the brink of disappearance. The witch was breathing heavily as well. In the process of administering his punishment, she had had to relive it all as well, creating brand new wounds on her soul. It had been centuries since she had last been hurt by her past. "It's enough," she said. "I'm sending your soul back into the world so you can begin your third life, and your third tragedy. I will never let your suffering end." Coughing up blood, the shadow lifted his head, shaking it weakly. He didn't object to the suffering, only doing it in the mortal realm. He had to be here, with her, where she could see it. He had so much he wanted to say, but only the strength left in his lips to put one sentiment into words. That he wanted to atone, of course. That was the only thing he truly desired. The witch bit her lip. These incomprehensible feelings he kept dragging out of her were driving her mad, and the very fact that she was unable to retain her composure was only a source of further agitation. "Are you incapable of saying anything else? If you're capable of feeling remorse, why would you do any of that to me in the first place? Why did you hold all those blood sabbaths? Why did you make a spectacle out of me? Why did you torture your slaves for fun? Why did you call me a witch? Why did you lock me up and murder me?" He likely wanted to tell her she was wrong, but because not everything she had said was false, he couldn't. And he didn't have the strength or clarity of mind to explain it in detail. So all he could do was cling to his self-destructive wish for atonement. "I'll never be able to understand you, Lord." The witch's mental state was beginning to shift again. Not for the better, though. The only person capable of untangling the massive knot that had formed was no longer around, which meant it would only continue to get more and more tangled. and she was starting to think that she'd rather be rid of him entirely than have him suffer for all eternity. The longer she kept him around, the more chances he would have to beg to make amends. But she was done with that. She was done with the Lord's nonsense. And she was done with feeling like such a mess because of him. Okay then, as you wish. This wasn't part of my plan, but I'll let you have your final atonement. As she spoke, she bent down and picked up the sword with her skeletal hand. By giving me your head. He didn't object, and he didn't try to run. Instead, he pushed himself up with his right arm, dropping his head and exposing his neck for her. Morgana looked down on him with disgust. She tightened her grip on the sword, pretending not to notice the faint trembling in her hand. Farewell, Lord. May your soul be forever extinguished from this world. With those words, she ended the Lord's life once and for all. And with his death, the truth scattered into the wind. Morgana's robe was heavy with black blood. She was exhausted. She thought having her revenge would take a huge weight off her shoulders, but instead she just felt lethargic. She wanted to get back to the warmth of the fireplace and go down for another nice long sleep. But when she opened the door to the hallway, "Have you finished your business?" She came face to face with the maid, her jade eyes glimmering unnaturally. Morgana took a half step back. What was she getting spooked for? She was the most powerful being in this domain. She was in complete control. The witch gave a little heh to mask her momentary stumble, then said, "Yes, I've finished. Now tell me, is the fireplace going? I'm rather tired and would like to rest." "But of course, Morgana. I put fresh kindling on the fire not long ago. It should be nice and warm for your nap." "Very well." Morgana lowered her gaze and made to leave the maid behind, but then she realized something seemed very wrong. How does the maid know my name? A chill ran down her back. If the maid's mind was still broken, she would never call Morgana by that name, because she believed it to be her own. Cold jade eyes remained fixed on Golden. A smile spread across the maid's lips. The witch could not, though. "Are you Giselle? If so, why? Why would she pretend to be mad if she still retained herself? What was her objective? Why was she wearing that unsettling smile if she was Giselle? Who on earth was she?" For the first time, she felt something like fear for the maid, for Giselle. She was the witch, though. She was supposed to be the one everyone else feared. She was the master of the house. She was the most powerful being in this tiny domain. So why did she feel like Giselle of all people had taken the upper hand? She had to have been imagining it. Giselle was her faithful maid, and she was the all-powerful witch. However, that dynamic only existed as it did because Giselle had Mikhail to wait for, her one source of hope and her weakness. But now that he was gone, and Giselle no longer had any hope, would she really stay in Morgana's servitude for eternity? While you were asleep, I spent some time organizing my thoughts. "Is that so?" the witch said. "It is. After Hayden's death, you told me of the 3 men who wronged you, and your enmity for them. That may have happened, yes. And then you told me how you made a wish for them, a wish that they would undergo reconstruction and meet their tragic demises again. Yes, what of it? Something about it doesn't quite sit right with me. I've only heard the events from your perspective, though, so I can only speculate on what it means. But a story told from one perspective is necessarily colored by that perspective. If the speaker believes something, it becomes true within that telling, regardless of the reality of it. I'm quite familiar with this phenomena, as I have fallen into its trap before." "What are you implying? Are you trying to say I'm wrong about what happened to me?" "I cannot say. The only one who could is no longer with us. Any chance we had of knowing the truth is now lost forever. However, unlike you, I was there with all 3 of them for their second lives. And in particular, my impression of the man and the third door, who you refer to as the Lord, does not line up with your depiction of him in certain ways. Would you really call him a heartless monster?" "Why wouldn't I?" the witch said. "He passed goblets of my blood around to noblemen like wine. Does that sound like someone who has a heart?" Giselle didn't back down in the face of Morgana's intense glare. In fact, she took another step closer. Morgana was starting to feel like she was at a disadvantage, despite full confidence she was right. And what if you were mistaken about some fundamental detail? Mistaken? No, there was nothing to mistake. The Lord was a monster. He was one when he drained her blood for feast, and he was one when he locked her in that tower. That was the simple truth of it. Why then did she feel like her chest was in a vice every time she told herself that? Why had her hands shaken before killing him? And why on earth did her mind keep imagining him begging to atone as someone completely unrelated? For a heartbeat, a vision of that lonely graveyard swelled up in her mind. Standing there was the slave man, whose name and face and voice she had long forgotten. The one who had taught her kindness. My phone. Okay, that's fine. I chose not to stop you, though, Giselle said. And why do you think I did that? Enough games. Out with it already. What are you scheming? Oh, I would never. I simply wanted one thing. For you to lose everything as well. The witch glowered at Giselle, who was still wearing the same lonely smile. She had no idea what that inscrutable woman was trying to say. She had already lost everything. That was what had driven her to become the spiteful witch in the first place, drifting outside time for all eternity. Giselle placed a hand on the witch's cheek. Jade and golden eyes locked, mere inches apart, and there, the witch gazed into the eyes of another witch. You surrendered yourself to hatred, becoming a witch who brandishes curses. And I surrendered myself to solitude, becoming a witch who brandishes desolation. This is a world too painful to live in if you don't love solitude, after all. No, there's only one witch, me. Why might you think that? Because I'm the one who started it all. I am the one who created this mansion, and I am its master. I bear more hatred than anyone. I am the one. As departed souls, we're formed by our will and our emotions. How do you know my despair, sorrow, and solitude aren't stronger than the hatred that makes you? And then, with an unsettlingly cold smile that radiated pure emptiness, the smile of the true witch, she offered the girl one final thought. Can you be certain the lord you killed was the same lord? And with those words, that tiny, insignificant realm became devoid of even pain. Good luck on the fishing. Maybe get something good. You got something of the best, actually. Defectives. In the distant Hoei era, while the... Oh, so bad at pronouncing Japanese names. While the Tokugawa shogunate governed feudal Japan, Yukimasa Ida made his living far to the west, with little knowledge of what lay beyond the borders of his own native country. The land of the rising sun was an isolated nation, turning nearly everyone away save for traders from a few specific regions. And those restrictions applied equally to Japanese who had departed the country before they were put in place. Yukimasa was a third-generation immigrant, having never once set foot in his homeland. And for that reason, as a child, he had a great adoration for the glorious nation described by his grandfather. And he was particularly fond of the katana passed down to him by his grandfather. Though it bore no name, the blade had a curiously bestial glimmer that entranced Yukimasa at first sight. Come from all chapters. We have not done yet. I was told pretty explicitly it was good to do these from before reincarnations, so I think we'll be okay. Especially because reincarnations implies future, whereas these all seem to be looking back, or be alternate endings, or extensions to alternate endings. If there's one that does seem to be in the future, maybe we'll pause that one. But this also very much seems to be past, so I think we're okay? We'll see. But I'm pretty sure. The katana had belonged to Yukimasa's grandmother, but she had passed away before he was born. His grandfather described her as a skilled swordswoman, slight in frame but easily able to take down several men more than twice her size. After his grandfather passed and bequeathed unto him the blade, Yukimasa would from time to time see phantoms of a young woman drenched in blood. She had sharp, narrow eyes, like him, that looked more like his than even his parents. He felt almost as though his own reflection had stepped out of the mirror and cut him down. Or like they were a pair of killers, standing shoulder to shoulder. With each recurrence of the illusion, it took root even deeper into his soul, and Yukimasa grew even more certain that one day he would cross over into her world, that he was simply holding in his true nature, that the beast dwelling within him would break loose eventually. This tale, however, is of a time when he was still more man than beast. Defectives. In the wake of framing and killing 2 crewmates for smuggling Spanish silver, Yukimasa was having something of an identity crisis. On both occasions, he had been smiling during the act, at least according to those who had seen him. If what they said were true, he wasn't conscious of it, but he didn't particularly doubt their words either. Well, they definitely said to do that one, but Ramen had also echoed that they had heard that these were okay to do first, so... Again, if one seems to be taking place in the future, maybe we'll pause that one and save it till after reincarnations, but it never hurts to bring up the point. I think we're clear, but I'm not positive. It was in all likelihood true. He had killed 2 men and enjoyed doing it. What unsettled Yukimasa most, though, was that his initial reaction was, I wonder what I'm going to become. Not a moment's concern for the men whose lives he had stolen. Once their still warm bodies hit the water, that was that. He held no nostalgia for the months they had spent out at sea together. Excuse me. He didn't care what kind of men they had been, or how much their families might grieve over the loss. Yukimasa wondered if that made him narcissistic. The lack of interest in anyone but himself seemed to fit the bill, but he didn't actually feel like he held himself in very high stature. He simply had this vague awareness of himself as a twisted, unsightly creature. On that day, the ship stopped at a small port town to replenish supplies and give the crew a few days to stretch their legs. They were still about 2 months out from Amsterdam, where his beloved awaited his return. What a hellish trip that was, a crewman of Western origin naturally muttered. If I never have to hear the word smuggle again, it'll be too damn soon. The way the whole crew's got their cheeks clenched after that's about driven me mad. Not blaming you, I mean just how it is. Yukimasa shook his head and gave the man a faint smile, and in his mind he chuckled about how no one could seem to see through his mask. The blame lay with him for much more than just the tension on the ship. Real shitty job you got stuck with there. I don't know if I'd be able to do it and keep a straight face like you did, but you're aching to let off some steam, ain't you? You could be straight with me. I could certainly stand for some relief, yes. That much was true. However, Yukimasa meant it in a very different way. Come with me tonight, then. I know the perfect place to get you just what you need. The tanned seaman smirked, which was all Yukimasa needed to know what he was insinuating. He hesitated to come up with a response. Worried about Captain Asuma? Don't. I ain't gonna tell him. Besides, it's not like he doesn't have needs too, you get me? Some of the crew knew that Yukimasa was romantically involved with the captain's daughter, and the man standing before him seemed to assume his hesitation stemmed from that. But Captain Asuma would, as the seafarer had said, spend his time off satisfying his personal needs. That was just part of life on the sea. Everyone understood, and no one considered it being unfaithful. Requiring a ship full of vigorous young men to save themselves for their partners, who they would often not see for months at a time, could in fact be considered a form of torture. There were a number of brothels scattered about the port town. For them, sailors were practically the ideal clients. A ship only stayed around for a few days to a week, meaning no time to get attached or cause other similar problems. About the only complaint a prostitute might have is that sailors tend to be quite pent up. They weren't the kind of clientele a new recruit could generally handle. Settles it. Tonight, grab something to eat, then we'll meet up at... Yukimasa forced a smile for the man, who had taken his silence as a yes. But he wasn't worried about Captain Asuma finding out, or being unfaithful to Pauline. He simply wasn't sure how much he could trust the seaman's recommendation. The last thing he wanted was to catch some kind of disease. Yukimasa was paired up with a skeletal girl with faded brown hair, which she had done up so much it only served to emphasize the lack of anything anywhere else on her body. This is your idea of the perfect place? He couldn't deny his disappointment at his assignment, who boasted absolutely nothing of what he saw in a woman. In fact, he was afraid he might snap her in half. As the other pairs heated up beyond the thin curtains, Yukimasa's interest plummeted. If a woman tried to seduce him, he would act in accordance with his base instincts, but otherwise, Yukimasa didn't have a particularly strong libido, so... You're not into this at all, are you? No, it's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you want to trade me for another girl. I used to have a few regulars, but these days I've got nothing. Sooner or later, they're going to toss me out on my ass, and I'll have to resort to back alley quickies to make a living. You're the customer. You got every right to complain to the manager about drawing the short straw. She sounded like a woman hanging from her last thread. I'm not going to cause any trouble for you. Well, aren't you sweet? You're lost, she said with a snicker. I object being called sweet, but anyway, I stand out more than most, so if I make a scene, it's more likely to escalate. You even went out of your way to explain yourself, so I object to your objection. But you do have a point. You're from the Far East, aren't you? Don't see many of your kind around these parts, so it's no surprise you draw attention. You know what? I've changed my mind. Don't ask for another girl. Clients like you only come around once in a blue moon, so I'd rather not let you go. Let's both avoid making a fuss and stay here together. Make it sound like I'm some kind of exotic animal. Heh, you're cute when you scowl. We can find out if you're an animal later, but you certainly are exotic. Not even going to pretend this is the business exchange anymore, are you? I mean, why bother? I'm just the leftover scraps that nobody wanted. There was something oddly charming about her gleeful laugh, combined with a stream of self-deprecation, which would have been less of an issue for Yukimasa had he become physically intimate with Pauline yet. Because by comparison, this prostitute would look like nothing more than a couple dried twigs tied together. But he wouldn't be able to see Pauline for another couple months, and he's beginning to think this girl might just do the trick for now. Also, Mitz, how's it going? Welcome to Viperland in the chat. How you doing? We doing short stories in the Fata Morgana universe. Don't worry, all of them are happy. All of them. Not one of them would be depressing. Look, love the hell of this game and its writing, but taking most of it. Oh yeah, they caught up tonight over dinner. They saw the remaining 2 episodes and caught up. So hell yeah, awesome. Yeah, I hope Afro immediately goes, yeah, we need that sound file on the server. I hope. But that's cool. Heck yeah. I know they were trying to catch up, and we're enjoying it too, so, you know, win-win. The ship was scheduled to stay in port for about a week. Although they would have to spend some time moving cargo on and off the boat, the stay was, by and large, a recreational one. It was early afternoon, and while much of the crew had gathered together to go drinking, Yukimasa was taking a relaxing walk along the shore. He was no less interested in exploring the unfamiliar port town as anyone else, but unlike them, he wasn't the kind of man whose first instinct was to go straight to the pub. They all jammed at him for being stiff and tight-assed, none the wiser to the primal urges to get buried within. And who would ever suspect it, either? Who could watch him walk up to an elderly man fishing on the dock, ask how's the catch with a smile, and imagine a bloodthirsty beast lurked within? The man gave a lazy nod in return, adding, ain't half bad today. You're a sailor, I wager, am I right? The man said as Yukimasa made to resume his walk. You are? Well, a warning for you then, outsider. You do best to stay away from any back alleys after dark. It ain't safe at night, no how. Yukimasa gave the man a half smile, feeling somewhat patronized by his warning. To binge shows quickly, not so fun. Yeah, binging can be good when you want to do it, and not so great when you feel you have to do it. Right now, I think the only shows that I am keeping up on this season are Sanda and Nocia. And man, look, love Garnt's videos. Love them. Gigik, love the videos. Funny guy, makes great content. It was a little sad to see him just make the obvious Among Us joke at Nocia, because there's so much there, and it's so good. And it's got such crazy production values going on with it, that it doesn't even... Look, I like Nocia. We are in some weird alternate reality where it is getting budget and animation and writing above what it deserves. And he just made the obvious Among Us joke and moved past it. And it's like, I get it. You got tons of stuff to watch and stuff to do. I get it. A little sad, though. Don't fault the guy. If I was a content creator working on anime stuff, I would make the exact joke. Because even the show does it. Like, I get it. Though, admittedly, the game, the visual novel, the game does predate Among Us and relates itself to Werewolf, if anything else, which is the exact thing they should do. That's the common ancestor. Among Us and Nocia are both takes on Werewolf. But, you know, I get it. It's fine. It's fine. He was plenty capable of discerning where the dangerous parts of town were, and he was confident in his ability to defend himself if someone tried to attack. There's already been several victims. Yukimasa froze. As in, murders? Killed deader and dead. And they still ain't caught him, neither. Wouldn't want any of our guests to end up next on the list. Out of curiosity, how does he kill? The old man turned his gaze down, his face becoming a shadow against the clear blue ocean stretching out behind him. He dismembers them. Hard to imagine, eh? Cutting a person into a bunch of pieces. He don't discriminate neither. Man, woman, child, don't matter none. He's a sicko, a complete madman, And they ain't found no pattern to the victims, neither. Nothing to say who he might be or who he might choose next. So don't think you're safe just because you're not from around here. Yukimasa could feel his vision narrowing, converging on a single point. Oh, he could imagine. He could imagine clear as the afternoon sky, and oh, how he wished that could be. Well, look who it is. Fancy running into you here. A woman's voice dragged him back to reality. He felt like he had just been pulled up from the bottom of the ocean, and when he turned to face her, he must have still looked a bit dazed, judging from the way she raised her eyebrows at him. Oh, let me guess, you don't recognize me not all made up for work. It's me, the girl from yesterday. She held her hair up in approximation of her previous night's hairstyle, to which Yukimasa gave an in feigned realization. So, what are you doing wandering out here? Bored? Got nothing better to do? He wondered if the woman was even capable of being less blunt, especially considering he had, technically, been her client the night before. Just taking a walk. Not much to see out here. It's the ocean. Don't you get enough of that when you're out on it? It's fair. I'll never tire of the sight of the sea. Is that so? She said, followed by a softer, slightly exasperated, I'll never understand, guys. But a few seconds later, she gave him a big smile. So hey, you're not busy. Why don't you come to my place? I can throw together a bare-bones little lunch. Again, I'm taking a walk, and bare bones is hardly a convincing sales pitch. I don't think that's it. I think, honestly, if you weren't already invested in the visual novel and you were giving the show a one-episode test, that is 100% what you come away with. Honestly, I think a 2-episode test would give you a little more, but, like, I get it. This is a guy who has to put out these videos quickly. He has to write content about every single anime that is airing on any season while also watching them, while also producing an anime himself. Again, I do not fault him in any way. I could be a little sad about it, but, like, I get it. Oh, yeah, no, like, I think the 3-episode test is standard, but if you do the 3-episode test while also trying to write something for each of those anime, edit something for each of those anime, record something for each of those anime, and get out a coherent video before the season is over, you can't do that. It's impossible. That's sheer impossibility. You cannot do it. You realistically go off of the first, maybe second with that, because you can't do otherwise. There's not enough time in the season. It's impossible. Unless you've got a team of like 9 people recording and editing for you, which, I mean, to be fair, I don't think he does, but I don't know. I don't know his recording editing process whatsoever. But yeah, like, again, no fault, no slander, no disrespect intended in any way. It was just a little sad that, like, that's what you'd get. Like, that's what anybody would get from the first episode. But if you give it that little extra, this Nausea is very good. And I'm just going to be this way because I really liked the game Nausea. It's shocking it's getting an anime adaptation. It's shockingly good, but let's be honest, nobody's going to watch it, because why would they? Like, people already don't watch visual novel adaptations. Even though I would argue it's not strictly a visual novel. I would argue it is definitely a single-player werewolf style game that just has the, like, it's still probably considered a visual novel, what do I know? It was a Vita game in 2017, 2018. It's now ported to everything, but I get it. Maybe I'll just play Nausea on the channel so everybody can see. The game, not the anime. The anime is very good, but I'm saying if you want a quality meal, pony up for some goods. So that's what she meant. Apathetic, but finding no reason to turn her invitation down, Yukimasa agreed to go along. Taken a liking to you, she had said. Stop by whenever you got the chance, at least until you have to take off. I can treat you even better than when I'm on the job, and free of charge. What do you have to lose? So that's exactly what Yukimasa did. Seeing her became part of his daily routine. And the more time they spent together, the more he learned about her. She had once been married and planning to start a family, but money troubles led to debt piling on, which led to her husband running out on her. And with the entirety of their debt on her shoulders, she had to start working, which is how she ended up at the brothel. It is pretty, yeah. They did a really good job of capturing the look of the game. So, that's nifty. As she told her story, Yukimasa showed a fair degree of sympathy, but took the whole thing with a grain of salt. If everything she said was true, she'd had a hard life indeed, but there was no guarantee it was. Yukimasa made certain not to be openly dismissive or skeptical, though, to play the good listener. There was one thing he could be certain of, though. He felt a tiny bit of solidarity in the woman's solitude. The sense she was missing something. The sense she had a hunger. The sense she had a hole that couldn't be filled. The sensed that she was defective. You know, we get on pretty well, don't you think? Maybe you could, I don't know, take me as your mistress? She sounded like she was only playing around, but still he responded with, "It's not wise to pair two defectives together." "What's that supposed to mean?" she said with a scowl. Yukimasa's ship was to depart the following day, and that evening the woman asked him to stay the night, to which he was unsure how to react. "Don't you have work?" "I'll just stay, I wasn't feeling well. It's not like anyone wants me there." "But don't you need the... I can survive taking one day off. I want to be with you." And with that, he could come up with no further objections. Regardless of what he did, he would be heading back out to the sea the following day, likely never to see the woman again. So rather than waste time debating her own life choices, it would be easier for everyone if he just let her do as she pleased. Tomorrow, none of it would be his concern, after all. He agreed, and she gave him a big smile in response. "I'm going to make you a feast tonight," she said. "You're paying, though." Yukimasa wondered if, perhaps, what she wanted most was to play like they were a real family. That was probably it. What she was missing in her life wasn't love or romance, but someone to sit around the table and enjoy a meal with. But that raised a new question. What happened after she'd had her fun? She found someone to fill the hole in her spirit, but it was fake, and the hole wouldn't stay filled forever. Oh, doing something terribly cruel to her, aren't I? There was nothing he could do about that anymore, though. Even if she were to ask him to stay, he didn't have that option. "I ask you something," he said. "Yeah? How did it feel when you lost your family, your sanctuary?" "You sure know how to go right for the heart." "I apologize. I don't want to think about anything that might bring my mood down. If you want to know what it feels like, experience it for yourself. Find yourself a girl, get her to run off on you." Seemingly taking his silence for discomfort, the woman let out a soft laugh and said, "But I don't want you to have to go through that." Supper was a seafood stew. Hardly a feast, but there was a homely warmth to the meal. Something she had likely honed over the years. When a man is incomplete, missing a vital part of what makes him human, what becomes of him? Does he lash out? Does he lose the will to live? Does he forget what kind of man he is? Yukimasa didn't think he fit into any of those categories. In the middle of the night, Yukimasa silently slipped out of bed and made his way to the door. Wait, but he didn't make it 2 steps before the woman grabbed him by the sleeve. She must have been awake the whole time. There's no way she could have noticed him leaving otherwise. "Don't do this to me. I've had more than enough of waking up to an empty bed. And I'm not going to let it happen again. Not this time. You may think sneaking off without a word is the cleanest way to end things, but you're wrong. Stay until morning. Let me say a proper goodbye." "No, I wasn't..." "You weren't what?" "Of course you were. I don't care if you think of me as a free tale for the week. You're just going to forget about when it's over. I'm using you for my own personal satisfaction too. But the one thing I won't stand for is you just up and disappearing on me. You're not the one being left behind, so you don't understand how worthless and pathetic that makes you feel. It hurts. It hurts so much more than anything else you could do. Don't leave me." That was probably what she wanted to say more than anything else. The loneliness that had created the hole in her heart was making waves, and this was the real desire that lay hidden in her words. She didn't want to be alone anymore. "I'm not leaving. I'll be back. There's something I wanted to give you, and I was just going to get it." What would that be? It's my way of showing gratitude. I think the word you're looking for is present? Yes, that. Her eyes were locked with Yukimasa's. She was staring through the darkness in an attempt to ascertain how truthful he was being. After 10 or 15 seconds of glaring, she let him go. "I won't be long," he said with a smile. As he walked down the moonlit port, Yukimasa's mind raced. No one truly understands themselves more than superficially. Some say you know yourself best, others say it's quite the opposite. The concept of the self is full of such uncertainties. The contradictions. Yukimasa suspected he was suppressing himself with his self. So while he had a reasonable grasp on who his outer self was, his inner self was a complete mystery, and that fact sometimes sent a chill down his spine. Who was he? What did he want in life? Which of his desires was the real him? Self. He felt sick. Also, Tovaz, how's it going? Welcome to Viper Land and Chat. Enjoy the lurk. Hope your weekend's going well. Well, I mean, hey, when they're not ostracizing him for just looking different. He's clearly portrayed to be a handsome man. He clearly does have ladies interested in him in all of his lives. When they're not, massively, like, small village xenophobic. Sorry, just need a little... Gotta get the drink. And while I'm already pausing for a minute anyway, blow my nose in. Cool. Wow. About 30 minutes later, which is definitely longer than he seemed to imply it would be, he was back, though he did return, so. Within seconds of him knocking on the woman's door, it was open. He must have been waiting there, anxious for his return. The woman met his eyes, gave him a pouty smile, and then slowly lowered her gaze. Her eyes gradually widened, shooting up and down as they did. I've never been very good about thinking of any one of them myself. I consider myself proficient enough at conversation, but if I'm not careful, my mind always seems to drift back to myself instead of focusing on who I'm talking to. That said, I spent a great deal of time thinking about you. The woman took a step back. Yukimasa followed. And I've concluded this is the best way for me to make you happy. She didn't even have time to let out a shriek. It was only the sound of steel slicing flesh, metal grinding against bone. As the nameless katana pierced the woman's breast, her mouth flapped open and shut, while her eyes were held wide open, fixed on the man standing before her. Faint gasps escaped her lips in sputters. Perhaps she wanted to scream. Perhaps she wanted to cry and shout and say this wasn't what she wanted. There wasn't enough strength left in her emaciated body to do either. As blood spilled down the sides of her lips, she mustered the last scraps of her strength, and with it she forced out her parting words, carefully chosen and enunciated to ensure he heard every last one. You pitiful man. What kind of hopeless fool would throw their life away just to kill a worthless prostitute? She cursed him as her life slipped away. Yukimasa, however, let out a laugh and muttered, "Don't you worry, I still have enough control to not act sheerly on impulse." Hey, Yukimasa, you hear about that whore you'd been banging? She was killed last night, cut to pieces like the others. I swear, it's like trouble follows you wherever you go. So close. So close. Almost put it together. Lord almighty, stay away from me, man. I don't want to catch the attention of whatever evil spirit's taking a liking to you. It was probably best. He would be safer keeping his distance. Yukimasa gazed idly at the port town as it faded out of view. He then turned towards the ocean, that vast, familiar blue expanse. The waves against the boat sounded vaguely like splashing blood. Sure. Can I ask you something, Pauline? Yukimasa said in the warm embrace of his sweetheart. Anything. What would you think if I were actually an unspeakably evil man? Huh? Where'd that come from? She asked with a smile, evidently assuming the question was in jest. Most people would. Idle curiosity. Well, bad people come in all shapes and forms. What sorts of bad things would you do? How about committing murder? Deceiving people? The words that came from Yukimasa's mouth were not the ones he'd prepared to say, which came as a surprise even to him. Why had he not been able to say what he had wanted? What reason could he have possibly had? Did he not want to raise any suspicions? No, that wasn't it. Is being dishonest really evil? Sure, if it's bad if you lie to cheat someone out of their money or cause them pain, but no one's perfectly honest with everyone they meet. I try to be straightforward and truthful as best I can, but I'm sure I slip up from time to time. So listen to me, Yukimasa. Pauline gave a wide, infinitely loving smile. Even if you have something to hide, something you're ashamed to tell me, that won't change how I feel about you. You've got nothing to worry about. Besides, I plan to be with you for years and years to come. You want to know what my live stream is? I'd love to. My dream is to live out a long and quiet life with you. I don't need anything extravagant, just an ordinary life, slowly growing older, having 3, maybe 4 children. We'd never fight, and eventually, before I knew it, I'd be an old lady thinking, it was an uneventful life, but it was the best I could have asked for. That's the life I want. Yeah. What about you? Now he understood. He didn't want to risk cracking the foundation she provided him, the sanctuary she formed around him. Yes, I too wish for a peaceful life with you. And to murder everyone, 50-50. Boy meets girl. Mikhail was bored out of his mind. His family had always been very overprotective, but at the age of 10, he was still afforded a lot of freedom. He wasn't quite old enough to have to start acting like an adult yet, and in light of what fate had in store for him much later, this would turn out to be one of the happier periods of his life. Presumably, this is the version of him we see in the date chapter. Something visually to show you the short story. Yeah, it would be nice to have a check mark or something. Yeah, I'll just have to remember where I left off, but would have been nifty. Even as a child, Mikhail understood his place within the Bollinger family. Maybe not, though. It has to be. He was obedient and did his best not to step on anyone else's toes. But bottling up his desires for so long put them at risk of blowing up, especially in days like this where there was an opening. His mother, who said, "Listen to your mother," as though it were part of her breathing, just so happened to be out of the house. So he wanted to do something different, to let out all his pent-up boredom. He wanted to make this into a day he would remember. And since his mother had taken many of the servants with her, there was no one to get on his case if he acted out of it. However, he had no idea of what to do with the newfound free time. It was just drifting past him. Every passing moment, another moment wasted. I'll just have to ask George. He may have been a precarious child, but Mikhail was still a child nonetheless. And he genuinely believed his brother would have some idea of what to do. If his eldest brother, Didier, had been around, Mikhail could have gone to play chess with him, or watched him train, but regrettably, only his eccentric middle brother was home. 10 days earlier, George had proclaimed he was going to paint a masterpiece. Mikhail hadn't seen him since. This is just supposed to be like AU. Maybe he was dead. That would kind of suck. Mikhail didn't want to have to deal with reporting a body. No, in all seriousness, his brother was probably just in his special place and had lost track of time. Mikhail made his way to his brother's room, a process that would usually involve running into a half-dozen servants, but today, the Bollinger estate was quiet as a graveyard. He felt like humming as he walked through the corridors, but couldn't think of any songs. If only he wasn't so ignorant about the arts and recreation, maybe he wouldn't be such a horribly boring person. But today, Mikhail wasn't in the mood for those kinds of depressing thoughts. He stood before the door to his brother's room, knocked timidly, and then let himself in. "Hey, George, do you have—" he said, but he was unable to finish the sentence. His brother was splayed out on the floor like a corpse. He really had found a body. Mikhail stood in the doorway, frozen and useless like one of his brother's sculptures. The air in the room was stale from having been closed for so long. "George!" After several long minutes, Mikhail was finally able to use his voice again. He ran over to the body and dropped to his knees, shaking his brother's shoulders on the verge of tears. This was his punishment for saying it would suck to having to deal with a dead body. "George, please come back to me. What happened?" The corpse lurched forward, causing a breeze that stunk of paint. Mikhail shuffled backwards on his knees, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would jump out of his chest. George gazed stupidly at his in-progress painting, heaving a heavy sigh. "Are you okay, George? Maybe you should get some rest." "Oh, didn't see you there, Mikhail." Or Michelle. Maybe it's not an AU? I have no idea now then. Mikhail wanted to disappear. He felt like an idiot for getting so worked up over something someone only to have them see straight past him. That's all you have to say after worrying me like that? Huh? I was just sleeping. Nothing to worry about. Your bed is for sleeping, not the floor. George chortled. "Did you need something?" "Oh yes," Mikhail said. "Mother and most of the servants are out of the house for the day." "Some kind of trouble?" "No, no trouble." George tilted his head until it was almost horizontal. A few moments later, he clapped loudly and said, "Aha! So you're bored!" He was right, but Mikhail couldn't bring himself to just say, "Yes, I'm bored, please give me attention." So he averted his eyes and said, "I would not say I'm bored, but it's just so rare for the house to be so empty, and I..." George chuckled. "You're right," he said with an impish smirk. Mikhail braced himself, fearing his brother was going to tease him. "We all need to change of pace every once in a while, some real excitement to mix things up. We've been running short on inspiration these last few days, too." So he was not ready for what his brother said instead. "Let's go out on the town," George proclaimed, at which Mikhail was positively bug-eyed. Now this is a point that bears repeating. Mikhail's family was very overprotective of him, in part because he was so sensitive to the sun, but mostly because he was a daughter of noble blood. He wasn't a vampire, so the sun wouldn't kill him, but because of the circumstances of his birth, he was almost never allowed to go into the city. If he was lucky, he got to go down once a year, but always for some kind of business. The city was like a giant cave filled with gold and jewels, but guarded by a big, ferocious, poisonous dragon he could only ever see a little bit of. So he was thrilled. So much that he had been raised with fewer hawks watching over him. He probably would have broken into dance, and maybe even a musical number. But he knew how to restrain himself, and restrain himself he did. When they arrived at the capital's central district, it was much busier than Mikhail had expected. There were people everywhere, going every which way, doing anything and everything and even more. I think it's because during their chapter, it was all from their point of view, and they didn't quite realize what they even wanted to be until it already had happened. Whereas this is being written about them, so it's referring to them as what they are. That's what I'm going to go with. But as such, obviously the family still doesn't quite, know, because even at this point they don't know. But with the power of knowing what is going to happen, it's still written accurately. That's what I'm going with. There were people everywhere, going every which way, doing anything and everything and even more. Someone was shouting from a shop, trying to attract customers. The voice was rough and deep and loud, nothing like the quietly refined voices of everyone at home. A cat sat perched atop a barrel, covered in filth, glaring at Mikhail with eyes that seemed to glow. His mother would probably hate this. Her anxiety was too strong. She would say it was too loud and unrefined, refusing to even set foot here. But Mikhail thought there was a beauty specifically in the discord. George laughed merrily at the sight of Mikhail looking around in wonder. "Looks like we're in for even more excitement than we bargained for," George exclaimed. "It's not safe. Is it not safe here in the city?" "Oh, heck no it ain't. You let your guard down for 3 seconds and you're dead meat. Don't listen to anyone who says they have something good for you, hear me? 9 times out of 10, they're going to toss you in a big black cauldron and eat you right up. That's just how it is in the big city." "What?" Mikhail went pale as a ghost. "See, same these days, but they just throw you in a giant microwave. Who needs cauldrons? Who has time for cauldrons?" And 3 seconds later, George burst out laughing. He'd been tricked. Mikhail flushed bright red. His cheeks were getting quite a workout today. "If there's anyone I shouldn't listen to, it's you, George. I ain't lying, just playing a little joke, that's all. Only a little kid would fall for that." One of these days, Mikhail was going to get George back. Beat him in his own game. "This," his brother said, giving him a quick wink. "This is the excitement I was talking about." He placed an outstretched finger on Mikhail's chest, right above his heart, and pushed gently. "It's going to be some real fireworks if anyone realizes who you are." He was right. Mikhail's mother would tear his head off if she found out her daughter was wandering around town in commoner's clothing. He wore a battered brown robe instead of an elaborate dress. His hair was tied up and hidden inside a hat. At a glance, no one would clock him as a noble girl, but he still felt awkward and out of place, and people were more likely to notice that. George, meanwhile, had done this before, and he really owned the commoner look. If Mikhail didn't know better, he would think his brother was a traveling troubadour or something. "You really are a strange man, George. You just now figuring that out, kid?" "No, just... that's part of my charm. I hope one day I can be as confident as you." George was probably the only person in the house who considered trouble fun. If Mikhail had asked one of the servants to help sneak him out of the city, they would have certainly taken off running, shouting about how they didn't want to lose their head. As a Bollinger himself, George would likely be allowed to keep his head, but even he wouldn't get off scot-free for this. Mikhail was glad he had George here with him. He didn't say that, though. partially from embarrassment and partially because he knew he'd be teased for it. So, where should we go? Want to hit the pub, grab some cheap booze, and toss silver at the bard? Maybe we should ease into things. It's a lot to start with. It's not like I'm taking you to a monster's den. Just relax, it'll be fun. A pub is still no place for children. Come on, I may be a dunce, but I'm not dumb enough to take you to some seedy back alley joint. Most of the pubs along this main road are basically restaurants during the day. Some even have inns in them. There'll be lots of very nice people. If you say so. Mikhail was less comforted and more terrified at the prospect of being lots of people, but part of him was still interested. Not to mention, he wouldn't be going alone. So he gave a hesitant nod. You're scared, you can always hold my hand, George said. Forward march, my young soldier. Follow my lead. Mikhail wasn't happy about his sprightly, air-headed brother playing him like a fiddle, but this was a battle his pride couldn't win. Holding onto his brother's pant leg, they set off down the bustling street together. But not for long. Mikhail stood flummoxed in the middle of the street. He looked left, no George. Right, no George. Had he gotten lost? No way. He'd been right there just moments ago. There was just too many people around, and he lost sight of his brother for a second. He wasn't lost yet. Mikhail was better than that. He would never get lost. But his pride couldn't change reality. They were on their way to the pub when George had run into a girl he knew and started talking. It didn't seem like they were going to finish anytime soon, so Mikhail decided to wander around and explore the area. One thing led to another, and now he'd completely lost sight of his brother. Refusing to accept that he was lost, Mikhail started chasing after people the same height and build as George. When one turned out to be wrong, he went after another, and another, and before he knew it, he was well off the main road with no idea how to get back. This area is much quieter than the main street. Not being familiar with cities, Mikhail couldn't tell if it was a good kind of quiet or a bad one, though. Maybe he just wandered from the trade district to the residential one. Or maybe he'd ended up in some back alley where no one could hear him scream. If the latter, he needed to get out of there, and fast. Back alleys were the home of ruffians and other unseemly types, after all. And who knew what they would do if they found out he was a noble? That compounded with the fact that he was too shy to ask for help and too self-conscious to let himself be seen crying or even shaking. Left him stuck there, just biting his lip. Why did none of my books say what to do when you get lost? And soon enough, he was directing his frustration at innocent bystanders. But then he caught sight of a stout woman around his mother's age, watching him intently. 9 times out of 10, they're going to toss you in a big black cauldron and eat you right up. George's words played back in Mikhail's mind. He knew it was a lie. The woman appeared rather friendly, and not at all like a child-devouring witch. But Mikhail was all alone right now, so everyone seemed dangerous. He was like a high-strung cat. Mikhail glared back at the woman, so she knew he wouldn't go down without a fight. And as soon as they locked eyes, she spoke. He couldn't make any sense of what she said, though. My, look at you two little sweethearts. Shopping together? You're so grown up. What? 2 little sweethearts? Was she trying to disorient him by spouting nonsense so she could kidnap him while his guard was down and demand a ransom from his family? Clearly. Hey, mister, came a voice as something tugged on his robe. He spun around to find a small girl looking up at him and sucking her thumb, evidently the source of the voice. Who are you? She asked. No, who are you? He stared at her, flummoxed, for the second time that day. My daddy got lost, the girl said. Think you mean you got lost? Are you lost too, mister? No, it's my brother who's lost. We're the same. The situation is nowhere near as bad as yours, thank you. Mikhail listened to what the girl had to say, doing his best not to explode at her. She was apparently 3 years old and had gotten separated from her father while out shopping. His hands were full enough trying to figure out what to do with himself. The last thing he needed was to have to look after a lost toddler on top of that. He really should have asked the woman for help as soon as he'd noticed her, but by the time he'd collected himself enough to do anything, she'd already said goodbye and disappeared. Unable to find her again, Mikhail was stuck dealing with the calamity all on its own. He couldn't just leave her there either, as much as he didn't want to deal with it. He was the older one here, and he had to set a good example for her. So Mikhail bent down to match the girl's eye level and said, Let's get you home. I'll help you find it. Can you remember anything near your home that might help us find it? Mikhail asked. The girl and for several minutes before shouting, Oh, I do! Perfect, what is it? Maybe this whole lost kid ordeal would be over sooner than he expected. He let out a sigh of relief. A brown cat! Which immediately turned into a sigh of disappointment. Cats move, Mikhail said. It has really mean eyes. Oh, forget about the cat already. Can you think of anything that doesn't move? I know. Monsieur Casimir is always sitting outside. No people either. Oh, why not? He never ever moves from his favorite spot. Needs something easier to find, like a building or something. Oh, there are lots of buildings, the girl exclaimed. The lady next door has a big flower garden. They're really pretty and red. Not like that. No one's going to know about your neighbor's flower garden. There has to be something big that anyone would. Mikhail realized he was getting genuinely angry and stopped himself there. Excuse me. The girl's eyes had gotten wide and watery, and it looked like the dam could burst at any second. He closed his eyes and shook his head, disappointed in himself. Here he was getting mad at a 3-year-old girl who was just doing her best to answer his questions. Are you mad at me? She asked. No, I'm not mad at you. Mikhail took a deep breath, letting it out slowly to release some of his frustration. He needed to adjust his expectations. She was just a little kid, and she wasn't always going to know the right thing to say. What am I supposed to do then? He'd been raised in almost complete isolation from the world, with only adults around to interact with. Even his brothers were a good deal older than him, so he'd never been in a situation where there were so many barriers to communication. And he was utterly clueless as to how to handle it. Would he actually even be able to help the girl get home? Gems, said the girl out of nowhere, interrupting Mikhail's train of thought. She reached her soft, pudgy little hands up and patted his cheeks with it right beneath his eyes, at which he froze, dumbstruck. 1 second, she was on the verge of tears. The next, her eyes were glimmering inquisitively. What was she even talking about? Where did gems come from? This is just how little kids are, I guess. Wonder if I was ever like this. At her age, too. Do your eyes hurt? She asked. Huh? Why would they? Because you got gems in them. Oh, so that's what she meant. His red eyes. Mikhail understood now, but he wasn't very thrilled about the topic. He didn't like the color of his eyes, or his hair, or his skin. It was all because of them that he had to be holed up his whole life. That's just what color my eyes are. There are no gems in them, and it doesn't hurt. Wow, they're so pretty. Pretty. Mikhail blushed a little at the compliment, despite thinking just moments ago he would rather talk about literally anything else. He received compliments on his eyes often enough from his mother and the servants, but this was the first time one had ever felt genuine, with nothing behind it. When his mother said his eyes were pretty, she was envisioning him as an angel sent down to earth. When the servants did it, it was because of their status. They were never saying it about him, and only him. But the girl, she was. There was no jealousy, or pity, or scorn, or anything else to her words. She was simply excited about the eyes she thought were pretty. I think normal eyes are much prettier myself, he said, without a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Okay, let's go somewhere where there's more people to start with, he continued, sorry. Mikhail stood up, hesitated for a few moments, then extended his hand. The girl grabbed it excitedly, which made him feel like he was the only one anxious about the whole thing. I'll come with you, mister. You need someone to help you find your brother. You're the one who's lost, remember? Wait, mister? Right? Oh, Mikhail just now realized she'd been calling him a mister this whole time. He'd forgotten that George had dressed him up like a boy, saying it was safer that way. How was he supposed to feel in this situation? Upset that she'd guessed wrong? Embarrassed? Ashamed of himself for deceiving her? The emotion that welled up in his chest was none of those, though. Instead, Mikhail felt something that seemed entirely inexplicable at the time. A mixture of joy and pride at someone finally acknowledging him for who he was. A faint smile spread across his face. Yes, I'm a boy, he said, letting each word linger on his lips. It felt so much better than any comment about his eyes. They wound their way down the streets, Mikhail occasionally working up the courage to ask someone for directions, and after repeating the process several times, they finally made it back to the main road. Mikhail wasn't sure if it was the same road where he had gotten separated from George, though. The capital was massive, and it seemed like every other street was called Main Street. As they stepped into the throng, the clock struck noon. The pealing of the bell brought with it another wave of people. They looked to be artisans of all sorts heading out for their lunch breaks. Apparently this main street collected a bunch of workshops on it. The artisans were all big men with even bigger arms. Their profession was making things by hand, and you had to be well built to do the job well. Mikhail found himself enchanted by the parade of muscles, following each new one with his eyes as they passed by. Do you want to be like them, mister? I don't know. I haven't really thought about my future much. Mikhail grimaced. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about it, but that he didn't want to. He knew all too well that he could never be an artisan, or a knight, or even a painter. Kinda want to be a craftsman, the girl said. They can make anything they want. Girls can't be craftsmen. Why not? Well, that was just how the world worked. Those were the rules, and you had to follow them. End of story. Mikhail was only 10 and he knew that. He knew what a girl's role was, and soon enough she would come to know all that as well. That growing up meant giving up on your dreams. Not sure, actually. At first he just didn't want to shatter a 3-year-old girl's hopes, but the more he thought about it, the more dissatisfied he felt with the system too. Why didn't he get to choose how to live his own life? Why did he have to be stuck in this dark and narrow road his whole life? What would you want to make as a craftsman? Mikhail asked, to take his mind off his own dead-end future. The girl's eyes lit up. Leather, sandals, and bags, she proclaimed. It's quite practical. He had assumed she would say something more cute and frivolous, like toys and sweets, or even something completely outrageous, like the stars. So he can put them out. Put them out, not put them on? Wait, was she... Does your family run a shop? Yep. Okay, she was the daughter of a merchant, which meant they were probably close. The artisan's workshops and the merchant's shops were likely to be set up near one another. Mikhail looked down to ask if she recognized anything in the area, but before he could, she shouted, "Ah!" and let go of his hand, dashing into the bustling street. Hey, wait! If he lost sight of her now, he would probably never find the girl again. So he ran off after her, slamming into a large, muscular man only a few seconds later. "Watch it!" the man shouted, his voice so powerful, Mikhail thought it might send him flying. His gut tightened. No one had ever yelled at him like that before, but he wasn't going to stop just because he got a little scared. He'd only met the girl earlier that day, and he didn't even know her name, but he was determined to get her back to her parents. Giving up now wasn't an option for him. The girl weaved through the crowds effortlessly, like a sprite out of a story. Meanwhile, Mikhail was crashing into people every 3 steps, and was beginning to fear he was actually making negative progress. At long last, he made it through the river of people and caught sight of her again. But what he saw made his jaw drop. He charged at an older man latching onto his leg. The man looked down at her, his eyes narrowed as if he was frowning, or about to start crying. He was very clearly the girl's father. In addition to his relief at their reunion, he also found himself surprised at the father's reaction. His only image of a father was a strict and impassive man, not someone who would show so much concern and compassion for his daughter. His father cared more about putting on an appearance of strength than showing love for his family. He would certainly never cry over one of his kids. That would make him look weak. And Mikhail had always thought that was just how fathers were. But there was nothing weak about the girl's father being so happy to have her back. "Are you the one that found my little pumpkin?" Her father walked over to where Mikhail was standing, grabbed both of his hands, and shook them up and down enthusiastically. "Thank you ever so much. I just about had a heart attack when I saw she was gone. Oh, I'm so glad she's safe," he said, and then kept going and going until Mikhail felt like his arms were going to come off. "You're welcome. That's enough." When the man finally let him go, Mikhail's arms had gone numb. "Ever so sorry," he said, scratching his head in embarrassment. "I got too excited." The girl, hanging off her father's leg like a koala, said, "Don't get lost anymore, Daddy." "You're the one who got lost, Pumpkin," he said with a sigh, but he was too relieved to be angry at her, and his frown turned right upside down. Mikhail let out a satisfied sigh at the sight of them. He'd completed his mission successfully, despite the trouble he'd run into along the way, and everything was all back to normal now. For them. "So, did you bring her here all by yourself?" the man asked. Everything was all back to normal, in the sense that he was finally back at square one. Excuse me. He still had his original problem to deal with. "I was here with my brother," he said timidly, "but we got split up." "See, I knew you were lost, mister," the girl said. He wanted to say he knew exactly where he was, but he knew an adult would see right through him. So he stared down at his feet in shame, at which her father let out a hearty laugh and set a hand to his head. "Well, hope you find your brother, then. He's probably having a heart attack right about now." "He's not worried," Mikhail said under his breath, but secretly he hoped the girl's father was right. Mikhail told the girl's dad they were going to a pub on the main street. Just a few minutes later, they were standing across the street from it. It was amazing how much quicker it was when you had someone who knew the area to show you the way, and it made Mikhail feel that much worse about all the time he spent wandering through the back streets. Like George had said, the pub acted as a restaurant during the day, and it was packed to the brim with men on their lunch breaks. Eating had always been a quiet affair in Mikhail's life, so this was a brand new experience for him. It felt like he'd come to a festival. Before long, they caught sight of a man pacing back and forth in front of the building. It was his brother, George, and when he spotted Mikhail, he frantically ran over, shouting, "Michelle!" So frantically, in fact, he tripped over his own feet and face-planted halfway there. But the bigger a fool George made of himself, the happier it made Mikhail. "What did I tell you?" the girl's father said, patting him on the shoulder. George? Yeah? After things had settled down and they'd parted ways with the girl and her father, George and Mikhail sat down for a late lunch. It was a very primitive meal, consisting of thin pieces of torn meat placed on slices of bread and eaten with only your hands. Mikhail was having a great deal of difficulty with it. Were you worried about me? He asked, trying to be as casual as possible. George took a swig of some watery wine to wash down what he had in his mouth, then pounded his chest a few times. He swallowed, opened his mouth, and let out an impressively colossal belch. Mikhail had never seen his brother act so unrefined, but apparently that kind of behavior was allowed here. It seemed to even be the norm. The heck are you talking about, Kate? Of course I was. Just about had a heart attack when I saw you were gone. That was more excitement than you signed up for, huh? Mother would be very unhappy with you. I mean, yeah, I don't want to go through another one of her lectures, George said with a strained laugh. He looked softer and more affectionate than his usual vivacious self. But mostly, I was scared something would happen to you, Michelle. Mikhail's hands froze in midair, holding a piece of the meat on bread thing. Thought you would just laugh it off like you lost me, honestly. What do you think I am, some kind of cold-hearted monster? I'm just joking, Mikhail said, sneaking a peek at his brother's pouting face over his meat. He wanted to give a nice hearty laugh, but the most he could manage was a restrained smile. And for a child who didn't smile much at all, he'd done quite a bit of that today. Hey, George? Yeah? Sorry for disappearing on you like that. George's jaw dropped. Well, I'll be damned. Never thought I'd hear you apologize for anything, Michelle. What do you think I am, some kind of emotionless hobgoblin? I'm just pulling your leg. I'm sorry for not keeping a better eye on you, too. Maybe if you weren't so busy looking at every single girl we walked past, that wouldn't have been a problem. Come on, don't twist the knife. That's where we're supposed to hug and say, yeah, we both messed up. George put his face in his hands and faked crying for a few seconds, and when he looked up again, he had a big smile on his face, which put a little bit of one on Mikhail's as well. His father would never panic like that, no matter what happened to Mikhail. He was too concerned about appearances. But his brother was different. George got scared for him, almost cried for him, panicked so much he made a complete fool of himself. And that was enough. Mikhail didn't have to be jealous of the girl and her father. His family loved him too, and he was happy he'd had a chance to see for himself. Hey, George? Yeah? Let's do this again sometime. Heck yeah. Next time Mom and Dad and our scary big brothers are out, let's go. It was extremely rare that they were all out of the house at the same time, so it was possible there would never be a next time. But Mikhail still dreamed of the day it would happen again. Even if it was a few years from now, as long as this wasn't the last time he would be happy. When he came back, he would just go see that girl again. He'd go find her family's shop, and if there was a pair of leather sandals and a bag for sale, he'd buy them. Then he'd ask the girl what her name was. Would she even remember him in a few years? Would he even remember her in a few years? In all likelihood, neither of them would remember this day, but a little dream didn't hurt anyone. He could still feel her soft hand in his, and he could still see her big, inquisitive eyes, like two little balls of glimmering jade. Always the nose. Alright, better, I guess. So it was the Revenant's dream we had done last time. Alright, so Painting's Ramblings it is. The Painting's Ramblings. Oh, I wonder if we're supposed to be going down instead of across. I don't think it matters. If there's short stories that all just tie into the main story anyway, does it matter what order? Though, again, time for a sip. I'm going to say it doesn't matter. I'm going to keep going the way I'm going, because who's going to stop me? I definitely should be hydrating more, but that's always the case. Yeah. Get the first one out of order. Yeah, so like I don't think it matters. Why, hello there, Giselle. Doing your rounds again. Such a diligent young lady you are. You could get away with cleaning this place once every couple of decades and no one would be the wiser. What? You're not Giselle? That's someone else? No. You're just the maid. And who am I, you ask? Well, this is quite the pickle. What on earth could have happened while I was dozing off? think you're just a maid and you think you're the witch at the same time? You've forgotten just about everything, and I don't think anything I say is going to fix that. You do seem a bit mellower now, and not so constantly miserable. I wasn't sure what to say to you before, or if I should say anything at all, so I didn't say much, out of consideration for you. Not that you could really tell from looking at me, I guess. You forget and take some weight off you, then maybe it's for the best. Not that I think you should forget, and not that I want you to forget about Mikhail. But I won't blame you for choosing not to spend God knows how much longer agonizing over it. Nothing wrong with abandoning ship, especially considering how long you spent on it. And hey, it hurt me too, seeing you in so much pain, so we both come out on top here, I guess. What a kind painting, you say? Well, thank you kindly. But the truth is, I'm not nearly as upstanding a guy as people think I am. And it was us Bollingers that turned your life upside down and caused you all that misery and suffering. Yeah, I know. First dumbfounded smile was testament enough. I'm an absolute idiot. That was obviously Giselle. He never got her name. But Jade Eye's merchant family. Yeah. So I guess they did end up, meeting later, I suppose. But they also did forget each other from that. Everything I say is going to be in one ear and out the other. It means I'm free to say whatever I want. By the time tomorrow rolls around, you'll have forgotten all about the curious talking painting you chanced upon today. So I'll start with this. It's a huge relief to see you smiling again. It's not the smile of someone right in the head, I can see that much. But it's a lot easier in the eyes and the heart than how you were before. Like I said, I'm a real winner. I'm not particularly concerned about putting up appearances here. Call me heartless if you will, you wouldn't be wrong. I'm not going to pretend I'm some saint, but at the same time, I'm not going to play like I'm a cackling villain either. If there's one thing I don't want people to see, though, it's me looking weak. I'm a laid-back guy without a care in the world. That's what I want people to see when they look at me. My big brother was their standard cookie-cutter, you can count on me for anything kind of brother. I mean, that ended up not being the case, but he sure looked the part. And Mikhail, he always looked up to D. Went to him for everything, gave him all his love. D was tall and well-built, muscular. Everything about him screamed manly man. But, wrong button. And I kinda admired that too, though not nearly as much as Mikhail did. I became a painter, in part because I didn't want to follow my brother's footsteps. Not to say I don't like painting, I love it, but people weren't going to be inclined to compare us as often. I didn't have to be as fit as him, or as good as chess. I had my own thing to be good at, art. I couldn't beat him at his own game, so I beat him at mine. And my whole not a care in the world deal was probably, at least on some level, a shield against having to admit I couldn't compare. If we were a few years further apart, maybe I could have just had the same admiration and respect for him as Mikhail. But there's not much getting past that boyish competitiveness when you're so close in age. I know I've been rambling at you for a while already, but would you mind sticking around a little longer? Great, I got an old story I'd like to get off my chest. This is something I was planning to take to the grave, and something I don't think Giselle ever needs to know. But well, you say you're not Giselle anymore, and I'm already in the grave, so what the hell? I'm just going to talk to myself for a bit here, and if you kindly forget anything you may overhear, that'd be lovely. Back before I became a painting, I was the head of the Bollinger family. Though I spent most of my time painting. It really wasn't the job for me, though. A guy who half-assed his way straight through life, so I left all the businessy stuff to my wife, Amy. Now, she was a real capable girl. If she'd been born a guy, she would have made one heck of a diplomat. Possibly even caught the king's eye. Before we were married, she'd had a bit of a fling with Dee, which she felt real bad about later. Probably didn't help that I had a tendency to bring it up from time to time. Not all the time, just occasionally. With that aside, she was a faithful, hard-working partner. Didn't take long for us to become known as the Dope and his Able Bride. Oof. To which Amy would always interject, "George's a very capable man, thank you very much." And that probably makes it sound like I just shoved all the work of running the house onto her, but in truth, she wanted the job. She quite enjoyed it, and who was I to complain? It also meant I didn't have to deal with one of the family's more significant dilemmas, namely my mother. Not to be crass, but Mom was not quite all there. She'd always been a bit of a nervous wreck, and it didn't take much to set her off, but it was what happened with Mikhail that finally broke her. Mom had, I guess you could say, a very peculiar image of what she wanted Mikhail to be, and he ended up not fitting that image. Now you're probably thinking, that doesn't seem like such a big deal, but it is. I just can't tell you why. Mikhail has to be the one to tell you. Anyway, some bad stuff went down. At the end of it all, Mom was constantly hovering over the edge. Dad gave up on her entirely, and I just wasn't sure how to approach her, so I kept my distance. Amy was the only one in the family who would actively engage with Mom. So, while she had betrayed me once, I had come to trust Amy again. We had a couple kids, I turned into a doting father, and life was swell. All my problems swept under the rug. Mom's condition, Mikhail, I left it all to Amy, and I could enjoy a pleasant, carefree life. But then Giselle, or I guess you're just the maid now, not long after Mikhail died. My oh my, you really aren't Giselle anymore. So, back to my rambling. Mikhail died, and I got furious at Dee over it. But I kept coming back to that. Who really deserved the brunt of the blame in that situation? It's nice and comfy to sit back and do nothing. You can throw blame around all you want. It wasn't your fault after all. You're not the one who killed him, you know. It wasn't long afterwards that Dee died too. Killed on the battlefield. I was told he died a very noble death, but I couldn't help but think he was in a hurry to escape. Listening to the news, I kept telling myself I shouldn't have snapped at him like that. I shouldn't have blamed him. Dee had to choose between protecting Mom or protecting our brother, and he settled on Mom. He was too hard-headed to come up with a way to protect them both. Though, even if he had, it was too risky. He served the church directly, and we were all under its thumb. If word spread that one of our own had supposedly sold his soul to the devil, that would have been the end of the Bollinger family. I wouldn't have escaped unscathed either. Losing both of my brothers in quick succession crushed me. And as I started breaking down, it was, you guessed it, Amy who comforted me. It's terrible what happened, but it's not your fault. That was around when I began sensing something was off. I mean, she'd had a thing with Dee. You'd expect she would have been bawling her eyes out right alongside me. So why on earth was she so calm? But I didn't press her on it. I knew I wouldn't get an answer even if I did. I also didn't have much of a right to question Amy when I was pushing all my problems onto her. Doubly so, knowing that opening my dumb mouth was what had done this to Dee in the first place. And before long, we went back to our normal routine. About 8 years after Mikhail's death, Mom was gone too, and the Bollinger family was down to me, Amy, and our 2 sons. I had started teaching the boys how to paint, and I loved every minute of it. And then one day, I started feeling unwell. My fingers would get kind of tingly, such that holding a brush for long periods of time would hurt. So gradually, my time spent both teaching and painting dwindled, and even leaving the manor became difficult. First, I just thought it was a little strange, nothing to be worried about. But then it started getting real bad. I had to be stuck in bed for days at a time. We called a doctor to look at me, but he couldn't find anything wrong. Amy said I must be overworking myself, and she made me these nice, hearty meals, hoping to bring back my energy. My condition only got worse. Eventually, I started losing my appetite, but she insisted I eat anyway, or I would never get better. So you know what I did? Tossed out the meals she made when she wasn't looking. I sent my younger boy out to town to buy me food in secret. And for a while, I ate that instead of Amy's meals, making sure it looked like nothing had changed. And after a week or two, the tingling in my fingers started going away. I could only laugh and grit my teeth and cry my eyes out. I made a life with this woman, trusted her, and she goes and does this? Anger and sorrow were drowned out by raw heartbreak. My firstborn, he was getting to be about the age he could take over, which is why I had used my youngest son to run errands for me. I couldn't be sure the two weren't working together. I was at a total loss. What are you supposed to do when your wife's trying to poison you with slow death? Even now, I'm not sure what the right course of action in that situation would have been. Maybe I could have banished her, had her punished, but remember, I was only head and name. She handled everything. There was no way I would have been able to pick up the pieces after throwing her out. And if my suspicions were right, and my older boy was in on it too, getting rid of Amy wouldn't have solved anything. What then? Spend the rest of my days living in fear of my own family? I was by that point worn pretty thin, both physically and emotionally. Every thought led me to the worst possible outcome. I couldn't for the life of me come up with a workable solution. Eventually, I got it into my head that it was punishment, that I deserved it. Obviously, what Amy was doing wasn't right, but my hands weren't exactly clean either. Maybe Mom could have recovered if I had looked after her. Maybe Dee would still be alive if I had put myself in his shoes instead of just snapping at him. Maybe if I'd given everyone the care and attention they deserved, Mikhail wouldn't have had to die. Burying your head in the sand doesn't absolve you of responsibility. And when I finally realized how great a sin inaction was, it was far too late. I'm dumb, short-sighted, and I hated myself for not figuring it out sooner. It should have been stupidly obvious what my action and inaction were doing to the people around me. Sorry, my nose just itches. I should have seen all of this coming. Yeah, Amy had betrayed me, but she wasn't the only one guilty of that. When I was going through Mikhail's stuff after his death, I came across a painting that had been torn to shreds, that I had made. By refusing to use my head, I had done something that denied his identity, and he left this world still carrying the pain I had caused him. By the time I had come to that conclusion, I wondered why I was even alive at all. I couldn't blame anyone for wanting me dead. So I started eating Amy's meals again, knowing good and well it would likely kill me. I didn't stop sending my young boy out though, just not for food. I also strongly encouraged him to move out and become a core artist. Then I started painting again. It's going to be my final piece. Every day, the tingling in my hands spread a little further. My breathing grew a little more labored. I was afraid I might not finish while I was still able to get out of bed, but I somehow managed. It was the most harrowing experience I'd had painting something in my entire life. True to her facade, Amy stayed at my side until my last breath. She held my hand tight, giving me a strange smile. It didn't occur to me at the time, but Amy always seemed to be smiling no matter what. In a way, it's kind of impressive how she managed to keep up with the loving wife act while simultaneously loading me up with poison. Tell me, Amy, how deep did your poison flow? When you were looking after Mom, did you talk about Mikhail? Knowing you probably figured out she was still alive. And I bet you read his final letter to her. It was you who pushed her to set everything in motion, wasn't it? So many things I wanted to say, but I stayed my tongue and made these my parting words. I loved you so much, Amy, so I ask you this. Keep my last painting in memory of me. I have no idea if she actually did as I requested. The last thing I saw before I passed was her nodding and a smile on her lips. The paint I used to make it, I mixed with a special something I had my younger boy go out and buy for me. A substance that, according to what I was told, slowly dissolves into the air, making it toxic. And it has some sort of reaction with the paint as well, turning it almost black. Quite proud of how it turned out, if I do say so myself. It was a gorgeous landscape painting. Sorry for rambling at you for so long. That's the end of my story. Were you even listening to me? What, you have to go clean the fireplace? Well, alright, don't let me keep you. Just please, make sure you forget everything by tomorrow, alright? Counting on you. I know, why even say anything, right? I wanted to tell someone. I just didn't want anyone to actually know about it. The human heart's a big ball of contradictions like that, you know? You don't? Well, okay. Well, see ya. It'll be another few decades before you come by again, I imagine. And when you do, will it be our first time meeting again? Will you even be able to hear my voice anymore by then? Maybe it'd be best if I forgot everything too. Who knows? So long, maid, and take care. When the angel comes to judge me, how will his scales tilt? Towards forgiveness or towards reckoning? But you know, I don't want to be an angel who makes that decision. Well, I don't want it to be an angel, sorry. No, you don't have to be an angel. You don't have to be an angel at all. Jeez, so many more depressing stories in people's lives. Can't imagine this one being much happier. Not with a title like Silent Night, Lonely Night. Mikhail was even gloomier than usual. His ruby eyes gazed down at a letter from his mother. If it were a year prior, he would have been crying or shouting or throwing furniture, but nowadays I rarely saw him explode at anything. And I preferred him this way. Getting loud and emotional over every little thing was what ordinary men did. But beneath Mikhail's gypsum skin flowed blood divine as mine. He was above them, and it did not befit him to behave as they did. Brooding in silence was much more appropriate behavior. I sat at the desk beside him, my chin resting on my hand. Mikhail could not see me there, though. Not that I wanted to watch him grimace at disgust at the horrifying scars on my face, of course. Mikhail, my dear. What? That was unexpected. He almost never responded to me anymore. Perhaps he wanted someone to speak with him in his present tribulation. Mikhail briefly looked around the room for me, but no matter how hard he searched, his eyes would never find mine. You know, if if she really was all-powerful in the realm of the manor, couldn't she just make it so that she didn't have the scars? At least in this ephemeral, form. I guess maybe she just held on to them. The arm, I imagine she held on to for theatrics, let's be honest. But the scars she could have changed. And yeah, a rare Morgana point of view. You should hang it up, I said. Are you out of your mind? Just teasing you. Gave a little laugh, agitating him further. Today his family had sent him Christmas decorations. First a handmade, probably by his mother, white floral wreath, a lovely thing that a young girl might like. Then there was a doll in its frilly clothing, also intended for a girl. Yeah, probably. She probably views them as so much a part of her that it wouldn't even cross her mind to change it. And if she's taking the role of a witch, why wouldn't you want to intimidate people? I expected Mikhail to toss it all in the fireplace this evening, but merely destroying it wouldn't erase the fact that he'd received it, nor that his mother would be expecting a response not from Mikhail, but Michelle. Despite my repeatedly asking her not to, my mother continues to send me these Christmas boxes as it gets cold. I'm starting to hate even the thought of Jesus Christ. You should direct your anger at your family, not the Holy Savior. Yes, I realize that's misplaced, but you could easily solve this with a curse. Just say the word. Do you need to stop offering me that? As you wish, knowing damn well she's never going to stop. Mikhail had changed a great deal since his first arrival at the mansion. But that was one thing he stubbornly refused to budge on. Did he really care about his family that much? He seemed to have drawn a line in the sand and convinced himself that if he stepped over it, he would be surrendering his humanity. What he needed to realize was that he never had any to lose in the first place, so his concern was entirely irrelevant. I would spare him that lecture today, though. He was busy racking himself over the letter and Christmas. Mikhail. What? Having grown tired of resting my chin on my hand, I was now sitting on top of the desk looking down at him. Again he looked around for me with no luck. Tell me about Christmas. Your family lives in a rather large estate, don't they? Larger than this little mansion, at least. You don't have to if you don't want to. Just talking about when I was happy only makes me feel even worse now. Yeah, I'm sure she knows that. I can understand that, I suppose. Mikhail had ever been happy? My family was too poor to put up Christmas decorations or do anything special for Epiphany. What gifts we did receive from the villagers all went straight to my mother, and I saw none of it. Though earthly desires were wrong, I believed, so I was hardly bothered by that. I was one who gave into those needs, after all. Mikhail, my dearest. What? He glanced slightly upwards. So close, but still not quite able to find me. Just saying your name. He appeared mildly annoyed, but didn't say anything in protest. Perhaps he thought it wouldn't make a difference, or had simply gotten used to me calling his name for the sake of it. Regardless, he reluctantly dropped his gaze back to the letter on the desk. I decided to leave him alone. He didn't seem willing to share his Christmas experiences, and I had nothing else to talk about. Morgana. Yes? That caught me off guard. Mikhail almost never initiated. Tilted my head, even though I knew he couldn't see it. Do you, he said, want to celebrate Christmas? Is that it? Had he lost his mind? At what point had I ever said I wanted to celebrate the holiday? While I was busy being flabbergasted, Mikhail stood up and took the wreath in his hand. He then began searching the area for me. Where are you? Right here. It doesn't help me. Where's your head? Am I close? He asked, waving his hand around in thin air. It's my shoulder, I said, still not certain what he was trying to do. How about here? A little higher. Here? Yes, right there. Holding one hand there in the air, he took the other, the one holding the wreath, and brought it up to the same level, placing it right above my head. An awkward silence hung in the air for a few seconds as I failed to grasp what had just happened. Wreaths in my family were worn as headdresses. When I made one, I would place it on my mother's head like this. They're gifts for the women of the house. Glad you're here, so I can pretend this was a gift for you instead. What are you? You asked about my family's Christmas. No, that wasn't what I meant. Why was he doing this? He went quiet for a moment, then smiled, which was all the answer I needed. was a very self-defeating smile, not meant for me. Laughing at himself for putting so much weight on only one of the wreath's potential meanings, and sorrow for the family who refused to accept him. I made a very similar smile. The flowers would never befit me, after all. Not with one arm violently severed and the other nothing but bone. I could never be the innocent little girl, laughing with flowers in her hair. No interest in your wreath. Throw it in the fire. It's probably for the best, yes. And what we learned in that moment was that Christmas would never be a happy occasion for us. That said, it was better than I had expected, nonetheless. We shared a certain energy there, staring in silence. A solitary, capitulatory, desolate energy. Mikhail, my dear. What? I turned up to look at him, wreath still in his hands, and he looked down and turned, this time matching my gaze exactly. He wasn't really looking into my eyes, though. He just happened to know where they were because I told him. But I was fine with that. Would you like me to write that letter for your mother in your stead? What do you mean? I mean, I dictate what you will say. All you have to do is write it down and sign it Michelle. It won't be something you wrote. Well, it won't be something you wrote, so I imagine doing it that way will take much of the pressure off. He didn't seem certain what to make of the proposal. I never suggested anything like it before, and I likely never would again. You're going to ask me for something in return, aren't you? Of course not. What do you think I am? A witch? Well, he was right. But Mikhail was a saint like me, so I wasn't particularly fond of him calling me a witch. I was in a forgiving mood today, though, so I decided to let it pass. I know how to show gratitude, thank you very much, even for a wildly ill-considered floral wreath. I was just fickle, that was all. Sometimes I would have days like this. Most I would continue trying to bring him over to my side to curse his family. But occasionally, I would show some kind of kindness. Merry Christmas, Mikhail. Some of them really are very short. We did Revenant Stream. This looks like this one could be. Did she work in a coffee house back when? I mean, the music fits the time period. I'm gonna go with it regardless. Now tell me, my boy, how are things going on your end? Asked Jacopo's good friend, chest puffed and hand-stroking a triangular beard. I wasn't sure how he was supposed to react. Annoyed, confused, disappointed, or as if he just stumbled upon a mythical creature. Can I take your silence as poorly? We're really going to do this? Jacopo finally managed to get out. But not without a heavy sigh, which created ripples in the 2 cups of coffee on the table between them. What are you even doing here? Maria. Yes, he was sitting across from his oldest friend, and very much a woman. Scarlet in the coffee house. What does it look like? Having a cup of coffee, thank you very much. Maria tilted her head, still stroking the fake beard. She had lowered her voice a few registers, but Jacopo could still recognize it as hers without much difficulty. No, I mean coffee houses are men's establishments. What are you doing here? Ah, thus the fake beard. Yeah. They were sitting in a far corner away from most of the other customers. At the time, coffee houses were social gathering places for men, where they talked news, gossip, business, or anything else of interest. And for an investor like Jacopo, it was a crucial part of how he did business. He'd come here today to scout out opportunities. Those plans fell by the wayside when he caught sight of the small-framed man with slicked back blonde hair. So he approached her and confirmed his suspicions that it was Maria in men's clothing. Why else would I be dressed like this? Doi. Please don't tell me you've weaseled your way into this place before. Weaseling isn't a very nice way to put it, but no need to get your panties in a bunch. This is the first time. Heck, half the reason I did it was to startle you, because I thought you'd be here today. Jacopo had many questions. So many, in fact, he wasn't sure where to begin. Where had she gotten the clothes and the fake beard, for one? Wouldn't the other maids get upset at her if they found out she was here? And why had she gone to such lengths just to surprise? Hold on. You said half the reason. What's the other half? Because I wanted some coffee. Doi. We have coffee at the mansion. I know we're not out of beans. That's not the point, stupid. Coffee at a coffee house is a completely different thing. It's about the experience. And speaking of, it kind of sucks. It's a real sausage party in here. That was more surprising to him than her being here. She didn't like it here because there were only men. In his mind, and in society's eyes for that matter, that was simply what coffeehouses were, and he'd never considered that as potentially detrimental. Assuming some other maid had said the same thing to him, Jacopo probably would have lectured her about the roles of men and women in the modern society, and how it wasn't her place to judge men's spaces, but he considered Maria too much of a friend and an equal, and far enough detached from conversation at that, or convention at that he couldn't bring himself to do that to her. He also had no idea how to effectively communicate that sentiment to her. Anyway, please don't go pulling stunts like this too often. I don't want to catch any blowback. It's fine, no one caught me. I caught you, Jacopo thought. Not to mention the curious glances they've been getting the entire time he was here. If he hadn't found her when he did, chances are she would have been thrown out by now. Oh hey, Maria said, her eyes going wide. She then gave him a wink, not unusual for her, but it looked very out of place on the not-quite-there gentleman look she was sporting. Next time I want you to go. You come with me. Okay. You're the big name investor, Jacopo. No one's gonna want to get on your bad side just because you brought a chick. Excuse me? This is a place for doing business. Also, don't call me that. You can do all the business you want. I listen in your talks, and when we get back, I give you my thoughts. You know I'm sharp. I'm sure I could be of help. He wasn't sure if she was serious or just pulling a Shane again, but since she wasn't laughing, he decided to assume the former. So you'd be a second pair of eyes then. You know, that's not a half bad idea, he said with a chuckle. Maria's eyes went wide. What? I've always counted on you. You know that. All right, you're making me blush. Having Maria as his right-hand man would be the best for him in the long term. She was the only person he was able to really trust in this world. But it would take a lot of work to make that possible. He would need even more money, more power, and more status. Enough to resist the pressure he would undoubtedly get from all sides. Jacopo was the heir to the Berzatti family, and Maria was the sole survivor of the Campanella family. There were still countless obstacles to putting her on the same stage as him. But in a week's time, I'll be taking the first step, he thought, tilting his head back towards the ceiling. That was when Jacopo's bride-to-be was scheduled to reach the new world. Hey, Jacopo. What is it? Well, we'll always be like this, won't we? Maria asked, looking stern in a way he almost never saw her. But before he could answer, yeah, of course we will. We'll never change, she said, as if she needed some reassurance. Yep, very short, some of them, but like perfectly like her to just, you know, dress up like a man, sneak in. It's perfectly fine. If more of them are that short, we'll finish tonight. I get the feeling we're not gonna, but I lost. Master, I was wondering if I could ask you for some time off. One autumn afternoon, a young maid stood in Jacopo's study, requesting a vacation, effectively signaling her intent to quit. He lit a cigar with practiced motions, took in a deep breath, and then blew the smoke out in a long, slow stream. Again, he thought, making sure not to let it show on his face. What's the reason? He asked. Not satisfied with how you've been treated? I feel like you've been quite generous. Oh no, not at all, she said. In fact, you've been much better to me than my previous house. I have no complaints about the treatment I have received. Then why? If I knew you would quit so soon, I never would have hired you in the first place. But you just started showing some improvement. Now all that time and money's going to waste. I'm sorry. I'm asking for a reason, not an apology, he said, his voice a mixture of exhausted, irritated, and scolding that only made the girl recoil further. He let another heavy sigh. Are kids these days all this soft? Christ, he thought. Another complaint to add to the mountain built up and locked inside. It's because I'm out with it. You know, I don't like when people aren't straight with me. Excuse me. The young maid looked up at her master apprehensively. His dark brown eyes seemed to pierce straight through her soul, making her feel like she was being squeezed from the inside out. Other maids had told her she was a lot softer than he used to be, but she couldn't imagine that at all. He was a rich, unmarried, testy man in his 30s. Everything about him was terrifying, and despite that, she was willing to face up to him and beg to quit because there was something even worse in the mansion. The head maid scares me. Jacopo raised an eyebrow. He had been expecting her to say he scared her. Did the head maid do something to you? He asked. No, she didn't. Then why? Ash fell from Jacopo's cigar. His irritation levels were rising. The young maid looked up at him, fear in her eyes. Are you not scared of her too, master? Your appearance never changes at all. The past few years, there had been an increase in maids quitting for vague, non-specific reasons, and he finally had his answer. When Jacopo purchased the mansion, he was 22 years old, taking the first step to expanding his family's influence in the new world. Expectations for him were high, and the pressure was almost suffocating, but he was still an optimistic, ambitious young man at the time. He had to do this, and he had to do it right, and it was that determination that allowed him to maintain the softness in his heart beneath the tough businessman demeanor, which was probably what led him to hiring the mysterious maid he found at his newly acquired estate. She was there when he first stepped through the door, calling him master and showing him around the property. Then, when she was done, she started working. Jacopo wasn't sure what to make of the woman, but she seemed to know what she was doing, and over time, his suspicion slowly transformed into respect. "Where's your master?" he asked. "My previous master passed away," she said with a perfect smile. "As the new owner of this mansion, you are my current master." Assuming that meant the previous owner had just made no arrangements for her to transfer anywhere after he passed, Jacopo decided to let her stay and work as she wished. It was the responsibility of those with power to give work to those without, and he felt some satisfaction in taking her in. And for more than 10 years, she did that work almost flawlessly, and as long as she wasn't causing trouble, he didn't see any reason to pry into personal matters. How long she had been here, why she worked as a maid, or who even she was. He never bothered asking her anything. But now he was 35, and the maid still looked to be in her early 20s, just as she had the day he arrived. Jacopo leaned back in his chair, staring absently up at the ceiling, watching the smoke from his cigar waft upwards. The young maid who quit was long gone, probably living with her family. He considered introducing her to a new house, but he'd had so many maids quit on him he was running out of acquaintances to foist them on. There was a knock at the door. He leaned forward and said, "Who is it?" "It is I," came the voice of the head maid. He called her in, and the woman who stepped through the door was indeed identical in appearance to 13 years prior. She floated gracefully to the center of the office, not making a single sound. He felt almost like he was watching a ghost. "One of the younger maids left today," she said, "so I wanted to discuss with you how we should proceed redistributing the work. I'll leave that to you, as always. I'll take care of finding a replacement." "Yes, master," she said with a bow. Usually that would be the end of the discussion. She would dismiss herself. But for some reason she stood there unmoving, her deep, unreadable eyes of jade locked on his. "What is it?" he asked with a frown, mildly uncomfortable. "Have you considered dismissing me?" she said, wearing the same faint smile she always had on. Her face was like a perfectly carved mask. "I know that the maids have been quitting because of me. They've seen what I look like, so rumors have been going around. The young girls are especially impressionable, so they're more likely to believe them." "Have you considered dismissing me?" Jacopo tapped his cigar against the ashtray on his desk, then leaned back in his chair. He had considered it before, but he always came to the same conclusion. Every other maid could quit, and it wouldn't slow down work as much as losing you. "Oh my, you think quite highly of me." "I know a capable worker when I see one, and you're more than capable. Hell, sometimes I wonder if you've been doing this job for hundreds of years." My," she said, her smile widening. "You jest. If I had been a maid for hundreds of years, that would make me a ghost." "Well, aren't you?" he almost said. 5 or 6 years ago, he might have been able to chalk it up to good makeup, but 13 years wasn't something you could just hide like that. Jacopo didn't like to talk of ghosts or the supernatural or any of that nonsense, but it had reached a point he simply couldn't think of any natural explanation. "Why don't we have a little chat? I'd like to get to know you a little about you." Her eyes went wide at his proposition. It had been a while since he'd seen her make a face other than that pristine smile, but even her surprise seemed artificial. With her, only the most restrained of emotions came across as genuine. "Is it going to rain tomorrow, master? You have never shown an interest in me before." "Indeed, you might want to set your overcoat out." "Now, what was it you wished to know?" "What are you?" he asked, not dancing around the question. The head maid gave a little giggle in response. "I am but a mere maid, master." "Yeah, that's about what I figured you'd say. Next, who was your previous master?" "He was a very precarious man, drifting between man and beast." "What the hell's that supposed to mean? Doesn't sound like a very good master to me. Did he even pay you?" "No, sir. The house was in shambles at the time." He let out another long stream of smoke. What on earth was she speaking of? When he had bought the property, it was a little outdated, but otherwise in good shape. If he took her at her word, that would have had to have been at least 30 years ago. He wanted to press her further, but he knew she would just laugh and brush the question aside. So he took another puff of his cigar and asked, "And who was before that?" "The father of two adorable little children. He was rarely at the house, though, so his wife, son, and daughter served as my masters. They were a noble family, and they treated me quite well. Didn't know nobility had lived here." "My, you believe me, master." "Oh, so you realize this sounds ridiculous, do you?" "I understand that it may seem somewhat unbelievable to you, yes." "Well, I'm not completely taking you at your word, that's for sure. This is just a casual conversation, after all, and I know we're all prone to some embellishment. So, who was before that?" "A sibling's grandfather. He was the man who taught me how to be an a maid. He loved roses, and I would often go out and admire the flowers with him." Jacopo twitched at the word rose, a reminder of a great mistake he'd made years ago. He snuck a glance at the window, closed his eyes, and whispered, "I see." "All right," he continued. "Who was before that?" "Before him was—" Her gaze drifted upward. Then a rift formed in her persona, barely perceptible, but it didn't slip past Jacopo's notice. She still wore that eerily flawless smile, but hair-thin cracks had appeared in her jade eyes, allowing a carefully hidden murkiness to steep it to the surface. For a split second, she seemed to be worried to her core, looking out towards a faraway land she could never reach. Then it was gone, just as quickly. Before him was my dearly beloved, whose return I am still awaiting. For that reason, I hesitate to call them my master. I'm terribly excited for their eventual return, though." "Sounds complicated," he said. "I won't pry any further." She gave a wide smile. It's best to just leave it at that, he thought. They weren't friends, she was a maid, and he was her master. "Next question, and I don't know how I never asked you this before," Jacopo said, letting it hang in the air for a second. "What is your name?" Saying it out loud only emphasized how ridiculous a question it was. He'd had this woman in his hire for 13 years without so much as knowing her name. With every other maid, he knew their name, age, family history, and more before they even signed the contract. But her, he never had a contract for her in the first place, which was unthinkable for a man who didn't even allow himself to make the smallest of mistakes. He had no idea how he could have let this happen. The only explanation he could think of was some unnatural power diverting his attention from it. My, you can simply call me the head maid as you have all these years. The master of this house, and I'm telling you to tell me your name," he said in unflinching business voice, to which she gave him the same smile as ever. And then, when she offered him the name she believed to be her own, the air in the room seemed to crack. "My name is Morgana, master." Jacopo's eyes went wide. While he wasn't as prone to shouting now as he had been in his emotionally troubled 20s, that was enough to push him over the edge. "No, it's not," he yelled, unsure why he was so certain. There was another crack in the air between them. He lurched out of his chair, the force sending it toppling to the floor. She, meanwhile, looked only mildly surprised. "No, that name does not belong to you." "Oh my, then whom does it belong to?" She giggled. Every second he spent in the presence of that stony smile felt like a knife to the heart. But by any reasonable measure, she was in the right. He had no place to deny someone else their name, but deep down he just couldn't accept that name as belonging to the head maid. "Master, your hand." He looked down to see his fist clenched around the still-lit cigar. The faint smell of burnt flesh rose up from it, though he didn't even feel the heat. Jacopo threw the crushed cigar to the ground. He had no idea why hearing a single name had sent him into such a frenzy, and not having an explanation only agitated him further. "I think that's quite enough conversation for one day. Please just call me the head maid as you always have. Now do excuse me, master," she said, and Jacopo could only watch in silence as she drifted out of his office. Jacopo's wife's bedroom was on the second floor next to his own, specifically the room she had used in the early days of their marriage. In response to information shared with him by a good friend, which he trusted blindly, he had moved her to the first floor, and then, still unable to trust her, he had relocated her to an entirely separate building on the property. Her room on the second floor had remained untouched since her disappearance. Knowing she was sensitive to sunlight, he'd had heavy light-blocking curtains installed in the windows, and then, so the room didn't feel too gloomy, he'd had it furnished with white fabrics and light wooden furniture. And it was all still there. He included the room in the maid's daily cleaning duties, but many of them considered it a waste of time, so occasionally it would be neglected. In the past, he would have yelled at them for that, but now he just gave them stern reminders to do all their assigned work. which worked, though he could tell they weren't pleased. No one actually believed his wife would ever come back. After losing everything at the age of 26, he had set out in search of his missing wife, both with his own 2 feet and by hiring private investigators to look for her all across the globe. But even after so many years, he had nothing to show for it. Jacopo was beginning to think himself that she would never be back, but he wouldn't give up for any reason. She had waited steadfastly for him, even after being broken mentally and spiritually, so he had an obligation to do the same. It wasn't worth much, but it was the least he could do for her, being the one responsible for hurting her so. He wished to have just one last chance to see her again and atone for all the damage he had done. That was the only thing keeping him alive now that he had nothing else. He stood quietly in his wife's bedroom. The desk sat her phoneticistoscope, yellowed over the years. He could still see her calling her phoneticus wheel with a gentle smile on her face. The same smile she had stolen from her and crushed under his feet. "It's a pleasure to meet you." He could hear her voice as clear as the day they had gotten married. Hers was a soft, almost musical voice, the sound of which he would never forget. "It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Michelle." They first met on the day of their wedding, in the waiting room. She was wearing a veil at the time, so it wasn't until they made their vows that he saw the brilliantly affectionate smile on her face. A perfect match for her name, he thought, which came from the archangel Michael. There was no one for whom an angel's name was more appropriate. But now the pieces had come loose with the head maid's earth-shaking proclamation, and they were coming together to form a different picture altogether. On the day Jacopo met his wife, somewhere deep down he felt as though he had known her somewhat time long ago, that he had been searching for her that entire time and had wanted nothing more than to bask in the light of that smile once more, and he would do anything to make sure she never lost it again. He saw a vision of a forlorn graveyard he had never seen before. A young girl crouched before a makeshift headstone, turning back to look at him. Her smile, the same as the woman he had married. His eyes went wide and he thought he was crying, but they were perfectly dry. He had long since lost the ability to weep. Was Michelle really your name? Jacopo's soul was bound by 2 sets of chains, weighed down by 2 great transgressions. He could feel them both distinctly. He understood how terrible the things he had done were, and that he deserved no redemption. Early animation devices. Yeah, I kind of assumed. I knew it was animation related, and I knew it had to be one of those spinning devices with slats somewhere on it. A few days later, Jacopo was returning away from an on-site inspection and decided to pass through the garden on the way. A woman with long black hair crouched before a small flower bed, practically blending into the night. Hearing her master's footsteps, she stood up, brushed the dirt off her skirt, and gave him an ever-flawless smile. "Good evening, master. What brings you to the garden this evening?" "I was looking for you," he said. "How am I? You've not been yourself lately, sir. Is it love? Because I am afraid my heart already belongs to someone else." "It's not funny. My heart's already taken too, and not by you." She giggled impishly. "You're quite right, master. You would never tell the object of your affection I was looking for you." "Hey, it's your boss you're talking to." Jacopo sighed, glancing over at the flower bed. The whole area had once been a magnificent rose garden, but he had ordered it destroyed 9 years earlier. Enough time had passed, he was able to grow out of his irrational hatred of flowers, though. And so it was the head maid's efforts that had brought it back to life, though on a smaller scale for the time being. "I apologize for what I did to the rose garden," he said, which elicited a bewildered stare from her. His gaze still averted, he continued, "You were fond of the roses too, weren't you? You mentioned coming out here to look at the flowers with one of your previous masters, the nobleman, wasn't it? And now that I think about it, you were the one who looked after the garden the most as well." The head maid let his words hang in the air for a few moments, then gave him a quizzical look. What has gotten into him, she thought. But giving it a bit more consideration, she understood. He had plenty of time to reflect on his mistakes, so perhaps an apology was not so surprising. She had grown so numb to the passage of time that she'd forgotten Jacopo was just a young businessman still getting his feet wet when they'd first met. So green that he had seen no trouble in hiring a mysterious maid who refused to talk about herself, eventually assigning her the position of head maid. Power, influence, business relationships, restless nights, constant betrayal. The pressures of the life he'd chosen had corrupted him, and then in the wake of a great tragedy he had managed to rid himself of some of that corruption, but only after he had lost the two people to whom the change would matter most. "You need not apologize to me for anything," she said. "As a matter of fact, I bear some fault myself for failing to see the truth. I could have stopped you, Master, and I could have prevented the destruction of the rose garden too." "Just a maid," he said. "You were in no position to see anything I couldn't. I should have caught on to Maria's scheming sooner, and I should have trusted my wife. The truth I failed to see was not theirs. It was yours, Master." "Mine? Yes. I failed to see the kindness and love in your heart." Jacopo glared at the smiling head maid like she just told an offensive joke. If that were true, I wouldn't have been so obsessed with money and personal gain. I wouldn't have killed my closest friend, and I wouldn't have abused my wife. Were your monetary desires truly as selfish as you claim? He clenched his teeth, turning away from her clear jade eyes. He felt like she was looking straight through him. "You wanted the money," she said, "for your homeland, your family, your friend, your beloved. Am I mistaken?" "Yes, you are," he spat. Well, it was true he had wanted money for all those things. They were not his only motivators. He also wanted it for the power, to put himself on top of the world, safe from anyone who would betray him. But eventually, money and power changed from the means into the goal itself, sending him far off the path. Had he simply kept his eyes on his true objective, rather than obsessing endlessly over how to protect himself, he could have done more for both Maria and his wife. The head maid gave him a somewhat melancholy smile. "If you so insist, Master, then yes, I am mistaken. Nonetheless, it is all in the past now, and neither of us can take back the choices we made then." Precisely. He could say it was all supposed to be for his wife or Maria, but what would that accomplish? Nothing. Allegedly noble intentions didn't excuse the kind of pain he had caused. He let out a short sigh, casting all those thoughts aside. "I was looking for you because I need you for something." "Yes, what can I help you with?" she asked. He turned his gaze towards the mansion, staring up a tall, long abandoned tower. It seemed almost radiant in the light of the full moon. "Come with me." When Jacopo purchased the mansion, it had already gone through repairs to bring it up to a habitable condition. There was just one area that remained conspicuously in disrepair. Initially, he was planning to have the strange, decrepit tower demolished. There was no point in having it repaired only to sit unused, so he wanted to replace it with something actually useful, like a storeroom. But for some reason, which he still didn't understand, he could never bring himself to destroy the tower. The entrance to the tower was at the back of what he called the Second Great Hall, a mostly unused hall near the back of the property. There were rumors among the maids about strange sounds and ghosts and blood dripping from the ceiling, going as far back as when Maria was still alive. Back then, he recalled telling her it was all nonsense, that he had no interest in you women's little ghost stories, but the truth was, something did seem off about the hall. Not in a frightening or unsettling way, though. Being there, he felt smothered with guilt and shackled with sorrow. So he avoided going to the Second Great Hall as much as possible. He hadn't even had lights installed in the hall, so stepping through the door felt like entering an entirely isolated realm of darkness. Jacopo and the head maid each carried oil lamps to light their way through the hall. At the far end stood a door not opened in countless years. Just an ordinary wooden door, though with a simple lock, not a heavy metal one with a complicated 3-key lock. As he unlocked the door with his master key, the head maid whispered, "Why did you bring me here?" She considered following it up with, "Were you too scared to come on your own?" But even she couldn't bring herself to make light of things in the tower's presence. "I started paying more attention to you recently after the last maid quit, and I noticed when you're not focused on something, you're looking towards one of two places, the former rose garden or this tower. So I thought it would be best to bring you with me when I came to see the tower." You see, the inside of the tower was black as the abyss, even darker than the hall leading to it. The light from their 2 oil lamps revealed a long, long spiral staircase leading up, and something stirred in the long frozen heart of the head maid at the sight of that staircase. Jacopo set a foot on the first stair, pressing down on it hard in several places. It let out low creaks under his weight, but didn't seem to in danger of breaking. That said, it was still an abandoned tower, at night, and nobody knew they were here. This was a terrible idea that could go wrong at any time, and he knew it. Watching him slowly climb the stairs, the head maid's chest grew tight. For an instant, she wasn't seeing him, but someone else. They were holding her by the hand, running up and up and up. Why did you want to see the tower? She said, trying to bring herself back to the present. Hell if I know. She tilted her head. He almost never acted without a clear reason. All I do know is, I got the strangest feeling I would find something about myself here. I see, she said, putting on a smile. I too have a strange feeling that I will find something of myself here. Climbing the decaying staircase was a long, arduous process. Every so often they passed a window carved out of the stone wall. The light from the moon illuminated the path before them, guiding sinner and prisoner ever upward. After more revolutions than the head maid was able to count, the end was finally in sight. But there was one final obstacle before they could reach the door at the top. The next section of the staircase had collapsed. Shall we head back? The head maid asked. If they were to attempt to proceed, one of them would undoubtedly slip and take a fall straight down to hell. Surely Jacopo would realize there was no way forward and give up. But she was wrong. Leaning against the stone wall for support, he placed his right foot on what little remained of the next stair. Then he carefully guided his left foot to the next. Several slow, meticulous steps later, a chunk of stone gave out under his weight, tumbling downward into the abyss. But even that was not enough to stop his determined procession. She watched him in silence. She was not afraid that he might fall, however, because if that were to happen, that simply meant he was fated to die here. It was an insignificant detail to her. As long as she was able to wait for her beloved to return, nothing else mattered. But he made it across the collapsed region unharmed. It seemed the mansion was not ready to be rid of him just yet. He turned around, shining his oil lamp over the gap. You're free to wait there. No, she said. I will accompany you. She then gracefully lifted his skirt off the ground and followed the same crumbling path across the chasm he had. When she finally made it across, he gave her a smug smirk. Damn, and here I thought you were going to float across like a ghost. Guess you really are alive. To which she responded with a little smile. They resumed their climb, soon reaching the top level of the tower. Beyond a door half rotted away sat a chamber with a single window high upon the wall. Through it shone a pillar of moonlight. The two of them entered the chamber, proceeding to the center of the room. The air inside was far colder than the autumn night they had left behind. It chilled them both to their bones, to their souls. Jacopo stood in place, gazing up at the window for some time. Then he walked up to the stone wall, dropping to his knees in front of what appeared to be nothing at all. He traced the irregular surface with his fingers, his hand slowly forming into a fist and dropping lifelessly to the hard floor. She could hardly see a trace of the powerful, wealthy businessman he was in that slouched form. He seemed so much smaller, on the verge of withering away. Did you find that something about yourself here? She asked, her voice carrying well in the cold, empty chamber. Yeah, he said, his voice shaking. There was far more contained in that single syllable than she could ever hope to discern. For a moment she thought he was crying, but from the glimpse she caught of his face, his eyes were dry, though he looked pale as a ghost. She stepped towards him, gently placing her hand upon his back. And then she spoke, breaking her personal vow to remain an observer. If you wish to end your life here, I can offer you my hand. The man spun around to face her. There was neither anger nor surprise in his eyes, though. Why would you say that? Do not know, she said. Seeing you there on your knees, the words simply came out. Felt as though that was what you wanted. She lowered herself to her knees as well, so their eyes were at the same level. He flinched, but did not avert his gaze from hers. You're right, he muttered, barely audible. There was a time when I did want that. A long, long time ago. But still I descended those stairs. I couldn't let myself just toss aside what I had sacrificed everything to attain. Even knowing there was only suffering to be found at the bottom? It's exactly why. I had to own it, just like I have to own my mistakes now. I see. Then I shall observe and see where this path takes you. Ah, what a wretched man, she thought, smiling. She was an experienced enough maid to know to keep that thought to herself, though. And she herself was also a wretched woman who had wanted to die alongside her love at the top of this very tower. But in her broken mind, those memories had been transformed into a fairy tale. The full moon had begun its descent by the time they left the cold chamber. At the collapsed section of stairs, Jacopo crossed first, his head going up. The head maid then made to follow after him, but was instead greeted to his hand extended across the gap. She tilted her head. Obviously he was offering her assistance in crossing, but she had made it over with no difficulty the first time, so she couldn't understand why. Not to mention, the master of the house had no obligation to help a lowly maid. But bathed in the glow of the moon, her hand stretched out to take his, before she realized what happened. They had both lost those they cared about most, and when their fingers touched, he saw a bright, spirited young woman with an infectious smile, and she saw a kind-hearted and sometimes sarcastic young man. Giselle and the slave, vestiges of their long-forgotten selves, bursting forth for the tiniest, most insignificant of moments. Mikhail, to tell you the truth, I wanted nothing more than to descend these stairs with you, hand in hand. Morgana, to tell you the truth, I wanted nothing more than to go back to those days when I could still take your hand. By the time the head maid had made it across the collapsed stairs, the shadows of their old selves had disappeared without a trace. Only the maid, who always wore a smile, and the forlorn businessman remained there in the tower. A faint connection had formed between them, though. A shared isolation and emptiness, and empathy as similarly damaged souls. That too would fade in time, the connection as fleeting as an autumn night. With him leading the way, and her following behind, they descended the spiral staircase together. "What about you?" he asked. "Were you able to find something about yourself here?" "Yes," she said. "Believe I did, but I fear it will slip through my fingers again before long. Never struck me as the forgetful type. Have been for some time. I have no room for new memories anymore." "Well, that's probably for the best," he said. "It'd be best if you forgot what you found here as well." "Not a chance." "Why, my," she said. "You are quite the intraceable one." "I'd say the same about you." "Say, Master, what is it?" "I want to tell you something before I forget the things I felt tonight." "Yeah? I was not terribly fond of you when we first met." "Huh, sounds about right." "But that is not true any longer." "Is that so?" "It is. Truth is, I thought you were creepy as hell at first. Didn't even want to look at you." "Sounds about right." "It's not the case anymore." "Is that so?" "Yeah, it is." So we're at which one now? Alright. Honestly, voice is kind of giving it a little faster tonight, but I feel like logically we finish the last one on this page and we hit this next week, right? Like logically we finish the page. So we're going to finish the page. And take more of a sip of water too. Ah, happier music. Rare. Not unwelcome. A ghost of an excuse. "I saw a ghost," Giselle said as she entered my bedchamber. She was wearing night clothes, and the feeble light in the candle in her hand made her look more pouty than scared. "Thought you didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that." "What do you want me to say? I saw what I saw." "That was supposed to be convincing? You sure it wasn't something else?" "I'm positive. There was a white figure going all woo at me in the hall." With each ooh, she took another step towards me until she was close enough to grab me by the collar and throw me to the ground. Why did she seem angry at me, not the white figure hooting at her in the corridor? "So what do you want from me then?" "Don't make me spell everything out." What does she expect from me?" She knew I wasn't very adept at reading people. How was I supposed to know what she wanted? Wait, slow down. It wasn't good to give up without giving it any thought. I needed to at least attempt to reason out what she may have been thinking. 1. She wanted me to exorcise the ghost. 2. She thought I was the ghost. 3. She wanted more lights in the mansion. 1's not reasonable. How am I supposed to exorcise something that doesn't exist? 2's out of the question. That's only so much I can do about 3 with my supply of candles. What are you going on about? Crap. I'd been thinking out loud. She stared up at me for a few seconds before letting out a dramatic sigh. The sigh was 98% exasperation and 2% what it seemed like. Almost lust. But I wasn't certain. "I wanted you to offer to let me sleep with you tonight." It took a good 15 seconds to process what she had said, after which all I could manage to get out was a flaccid, "Huh?" Giselle's face was bright red, and I was sure mine was no better. She felt warmer than usual through her night clothes. I wasn't sure if it was because the fabric was thin or she was just warm. Maybe it was both. Giselle giggled, nuzzling my neck. It was an impressively quick turnaround for someone who had been pouting at me only minutes before. In a way, it felt somewhat like having a dog or a cat. At first we were both nervous, but that quickly melted away, leaving only comfort and warmth. Body heat belonging to neither of us and both. Sweetness. I never could have imagined the day would come where I welcomed someone else's touch as much as I did hers. We'll get used to this eventually. Do you really think I'll be able to? Of course. Before you know it, this will be nothing. In some ways, that's kinda sad. Sure, it can be, but the happy will be stronger than the sad. Something becoming every day isn't a bad thing, I don't think. I suppose. She was probably right. Her becoming a natural part of my life was a good thing, but then the closer she got, the harder it would get to be apart again. In time, would we get close enough that touch was just completely a normal thing for me? Would I be comfortable touching her arms or her lips? Would I be able to open myself up to her entirely? And would she accept me for who I was? I hoped so. To all of it. You're so tall, Mikhail. It's wonderful. Why do you say that? Well, I'm the tallest one in my family. My big sister's so small, and she's the most precious thing in the world. I've always been jealous of her for that. Like she's more of a girl than me. Bet her wedding was absolutely lovely, too. The surprise. You're perfect just the way you are, though. Oh, really? That's not what you said when I first arrived. I've grown, thank you. Her breath tickled my neck as she laughed. So I love the way I can just fit entirely in your arms. Sorry I couldn't be buff for you, too. Hey, you're never going to let me live that down, are you? Just a little payback. Ooh, she said, looking up at me and pouting. Her jade eyes seems to glimmer even in the dark. They were beautiful, but I would keep that thought to myself. I didn't want to ruin the moment with what would sound like cheap flirting. This glimmer was worth so much more than that. And as was she. Giselle. Giselle, I'm so glad to have you in my life. Good night. Always the smoothest. It was definitely shorter than I thought, but this is the ideal stopping point. So I'm going to call it here. We'll finish it next week for sure. And depending on how much time we have left next week, we'll either cut it there or start up reincarnations. But it will, unless these are super long, we're going to finish this next week. These are interesting. I definitely, like, none of them are important. I understand why they're short stories and why we could realistically not go through these, but it's little extra bits of flavor, little extra moments of extra sadness or awkwardness or positiveness. Just little, yeah. The added info is nice. Fleshing out more of the characters is never going to be a bad thing. None of these things change the core of what we know them as. It just add a little more spice, a little more flavor, a little je ne sais quoi. Yeah, also enjoying this. For now, though, we got a monster, a quote, a Discord. Oh, Valhalla. And, I don't even know if we got a great sound effect for this. When in doubt, it's oof. Nani? Sure. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in, thank you all for watching. Tomorrow we're back to 9 Souls, before stopping 9 Souls again for at least 2 days, because we have the Final Fantasy XIV update and the Monster Hunter update. It's so... I think I have to commit to doing GOG first. I really do enjoy doing the 14 raids day 1, but I think I have to commit to Monster Hunter for this one. This is big, this is huge. This is the return of the first monster that, like, I ever got to in, like, endgame Monster Hunter, and only by help of chat and viewers online. So, as a monster, it means a lot to me. So it coming back has to take preference there. Thursday we'll probably hit the raids. There's MSQ with this patch too, isn't there? The raids are more important to me right now. I like the story, don't get me wrong, but like the raids are like the finality of the raids, whereas the story will be just starting towards a new expansion, right? We'll do both, but I think Thursday we make sure we do the raids, start the story if we have extra time, finish it Saturday, I guess? I don't know. But for sure those two. We're for sure doing GOG Tuesday, and we're for sure doing raids Thursday. Past that, we'll see what happens. We'll see what goes. Well, yeah, but I'm pretty sure the last bit of story we did was the end of Dawn Trail. I think that was explicitly supposed to be the end of Dawn Trail. So anything else will be either interim stuff or slow lead up to the next expansion. But pretty explicitly, I believe the last MSQ update was supposed to be... It could be filler too, for sure. And I'm not hating on that, because even the filler can be fun. I'm just more interested in the raids in this specific moment, because it's the end. Well, while that was the end of the story, this is the end of this raid story. And I've really enjoyed these raids, so, you know, all of that. But for sure, 9 Souls tomorrow, Monster Hunter Tuesday, raids Thursday. That I feel pretty safe in saying. Oh, for sure the Glam update, which is cool, but that's not something I need to like do too much with on stream. Like, that's awesome, love it. That's a great move. That's going to help a ton of people in big and little ways. But like, it's not something that needs to have dedicated stream time to it, really. But yeah, that's what we got. That's what we're going to be doing. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for watching. This has been Viper for Viperland. I'll see you all next time. Also, one of these days, I'll actually get these archives up on YouTube. You can't prove otherwise. My backlog of archives is getting huge.